All right, good evening, folks. We're about to get started. All right, I want to welcome everybody to the meeting for the mayor and council for May 11th, 2021. In just a minute, I'm going to ask Detective Blake Terry to come up and do the invocation for us, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance from Officer Chase Gordy. I will ask you gentlemen to remain after you have performed those tasks, because I want to say a few words about you, okay? All right, if everybody would please rise. And I will ask Detective Blake Terry to come forward and lead us in the invocation.
Father, we thank you for this day, Father. We thank you, Lord, that you've allowed us to be here in good health, God. Lord, I pray that we would honor you tonight, Lord, the council and the mayor, they would honor you in all that they do, everyone that's here, Father. Lord, I thank you for Chase, God. I thank you that he's here with us, Father. Lord, I pray you would be with him in his rehab, Father. Help us never to forget the sacrifice him and the men on his ship made that night, God. May we never forget the bravery and the heroism that they showed for strangers, God. I thank you so much that we know them, and I thank you that you spared them, Father. Have mercy on us as only you can, Lord. It's in Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Thank you. Now for the Pledge of Allegiance, sir.
Pledge of allegiance to
the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, sir. Y'all may be seated. So let me first introduce Officer Blake Terry with the Villa Rica Police Department. Officer Blake Terry has been with the Villa Rica Police Department for 12 years. He has spent the majority of his career on patrol and the last several years as an investigator. He is also a pastor for Mount Vernon Baptist Church in Buchanan. Thank you for being here tonight. These little brief bios that get produced and given to me, I usually just read them word for word, but this one for Chase seemed awfully short, given the circumstances that we find ourselves in tonight. And I want to say a special thank you to Chase, and I know many of you were here tonight. We had a little presentation for all of the folks involved in that shooting incident, and when I think about that, I've heard this story so many times from so many different people, and every time I'm humbled by some new element or I'm impacted in some other way. And I just think to myself, I mean, what an honor it is to be with you guys when y'all come in here tonight. I'm honored to represent the city of Villa Rica in doing that, but I mean, there's nothing about me that has the kind of bravery that it takes to do what you guys did that night, and I want to say a special thank you for that. Yeah, let's give him a hand. I know it must be a little overwhelming, but believe me, it's well deserved. Believe me. Officer Chase Gordy has been with the Villa Rica Police Department since June of 2020. He's a recent graduate of the University of West Georgia and lives in Carrollton. I laugh a little bit because he and I have a special history. Not long after that, Officer Gordy pulled me over here in the city of Villa Rica. And you could tell when he came up to the car that he thought maybe he knew me, but he wasn't sure. So tonight I asked him if he remembers me, and he says, "Yes, sir, I do remember you." So I appreciate what you do, sir. Thank you. All right, I'm going to move on to the next piece of our agenda. And this is ceremonial presentations. I'm going to do these out of order because this week is actually National Police Week, and I and the council are honored to designate May 9th through 16th 2020 as National Police Week, and May 15, 2021 is National Peace Officers Memorial Day. And I'm going to read this proclamation into the record tonight. Whereas the members of the law enforcement agency of the City of Villa Rica play an important role in safeguarding the rights and freedoms of the citizens of our community, And whereas it is important that all citizens know and understand the problems, duties, and responsibilities of their police department, and that members of our department recognize their duty to serve the people by safeguarding life and liberty, protecting them against violence and disorder, and protecting the innocent against deception and the weak against oppression or intimidation. And whereas our police department has grown to be a modern and scientific law enforcement agency which unceasingly provides a vital public service. Now, therefore, we, the mayor and city council of the city of Villa Rica, Georgia, do recognize the week of May 9 through 16, 2021 as National Police Week and May 15, 2021 as National Peace Officers Memorial Day, and further extend appreciation to our police chief, Michael Mansour, Captain Scott Parker, Captain Keith Shaddix, and Lieutenant Hunter Etheridge, and to all law enforcement for the vital services they perform and their exemplary dedication to the community they serve. It is so proclaimed on this 11th day of May, 2021. Please give them a hand. All right, and I know with all that fanfare, this may seem a little mundane, but let's also recognize Dorothy Sue Worthen. Is she here?
Yeah.
I don't know her. There she, oh, I know her by a different name. I do. Come on up here. We want to recognize you for 15 years of service, and I want to ask Tracy, is Tracy here? Yeah. Tracy to come up and present this to you and say a few words.
You got the handheld?
I do. Tracy, would you like to? She's required to be nice.
I am always nice, Miss Dorothy. But you told me to tell the truth. So I'm going to tell the truth, and that's not being nice. No, I'm just kidding. I have only known Miss Dorothy for about 7 to 8 months. She works in our senior center in our kitchen, and although we are very slow right now, we're still working and trying to be relevant in the community. But Miss Dorothy oversees our kitchen operations. Her supervisor is here, Miss Ernestine Mullins, who's been here for years, and you probably drove the school bus for Chase. You probably drove Chase's school bus, didn't you? You drove the school bus for a number of years. So, but we're very delighted to have her with us, and I've been overjoyed to work with her. She's always got a joke, something nice to say, and she's just fun to have around, and we really enjoy having you in the department. So I hope to see you for many more years. And they're ready to get back at it, by the way, Tom. So you heard it from the horse's mouth right here. So looking forward to getting you back going. So thank you all. Thank you for all your service and for 15 years with the city of Villa Rica.
Thank you. Would you like to say anything? All right, let's get a photo with y'all. All right, thank you. Thank you. All right, let's move into the adoption of the agenda. Is there an amendment to the agenda?
Mr. Mayor.
Yes,
I'd
sir.
like to recommend 2 changes to the agenda.
Okay.
I would like to add item C6, speed limit reduction on Punkintown Road. And I would like to table item E1, resolution of support for changes to state highway system and acceptance of 2 roadways.
All right, give me just a moment. All right, is there any objection to either of these 2 amendments before I get to the full agenda? All right. Now I'll entertain a, wait a minute, which one is tabled? Where's it at?
E1,
E1.
utilities.
Thank you, sir. All right, I'll entertain are there any other changes, amendments?
Just that
Miss-
it's beyond tabled, correct? Didn't you want it completely removed?
That was a different
Oh,
one.
okay, okay.
All right, I'll entertain a motion to it.
Okay, make a motion to adopt the revised agenda.
Second.
All right, have a motion to adopt the agenda as amended and a second. All in favor? That's unanimous. We now have an agenda to work from, and we will move forward. The next item on our agenda is for public comments. and it does look like we have a healthy list and we have a healthy crowd. So here's how this works. I am going to recognize each person who has signed up first, and then at the end, if you did not sign up, missed the sign-up sheet, whatever, I'll give opportunity for that. I'm going to ask you to please keep your comments on a professional level. We will not accept comments that are considered by the chair to be of a personal attack on any individual or group of individuals. If you deviate from this protocol, you'll receive a warning from the chair. If you deviate a second time, you'll be leaving. Only one person speaking at a time, and please no comments from the audience. We will give you 3 minutes. The clerk has that up on the screen, and we will start with Rex Camp.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, sir.
one point that
Yes,
we
sir.
probably should make, I think a number of people that have signed up may be signed up in relation to zoning matters, so you might announce that there's going to be a separate public hearing
That's
on those
perfectly
zoning
fair.
matters.
And it happens almost every meeting with their public hearings. So if you have put your name on this sheet, but you are actually here for a public hearing, you can just simply let me know that when I call your name, and you'll be recognized during the public hearing portion of the meeting, okay? All right, sir, if you will give us your name and address for the record.
Rex Camp, 719 Old Town Yard Road, Villa Rica, Georgia, 30180. 209 Main Street is the building I own in the downtown area.
All right.
Mr. Mayor, Villa Rica City Council, I stand here today to give opposition to the proposal at hand to expand the Historic Preservation District and list it in any state or national registry or historic places. I do not want anyone to think that I'm opposed to the preservation of history. That could not be further from the truth. The city of Villa Rica has a rich history that should never be forgotten, but it has nothing to do with physical buildings that the VRHPC wants to control with an ordinance and state law that has no place for the most part here in the city of Villa Rica. Since the working inception at the end of 2014, there has been only 6 applications for certificates of appropriateness, 1 in 2017, 1 in 2018, each for building permits. The latter was one that I applied for at the end and took 10 weeks, 4 days from application for a building permit to the conclusion with an appeal with the city council in my favor. The others were all for signage in the downtown area and not just for the north side of the railroad. The last application was in January 2019, over 2 years ago. In this regard, on signage, it is my opinion that either the ordinance concerning signage is valid for the entire city, including downtown, or it is not. For me, that extends also to the building permits applied for and should not be subjected to the oppressive limits of an unelected commission that exists only for the purpose of show and receive notation on a certificate or plaque. There are only a very few circumstances in Villa Rica that have any slight architectural significance, none of which are in the downtown district. There are, however, many historical events having nothing to do with buildings that should be remembered. The most notable was the natural gas explosion on December the 5th, 1957, of which I remember well. The families and friends of these 12 lives lost on that fateful day should never be forgotten. The rebuilding of in recent years of the building near the exact building that was lost is a testament to the memory of those lost. This was the wishes of the owners and the building in this building and was not coerced by any city subset government body such as the Villa Rica Historical Preservation Commission. This is how it should be. Over time, buildings must be repaired, maintained.
All right, sir, I'm going to ask you to stop right there because you've used up the 3 minutes, but I appreciate your comments.
I'm not even close to finished.
Yeah, that's rough. Is there anybody else here who's with you who would like to speak?
Do what?
Do you have anybody else with you who would like to finish reading whatever you've got prepared there?
I would like to finish it.
But I'm only going to allow you 3 minutes, sir. All right, thank you. All right, the next person up is Doug Lang. Hello, sir.
I just want to make sure this is the time for me to speak about the National and Local Historic District.
Well, there also will be a public hearing time when you can talk, if that's what you would like to do. You can do it now, and you can do it then, or you can do both. Either one. It doesn't matter.
Okay.
State your name and address for the record, and you have 3 minutes.
Okay. My name is Doug Lang. I live at 262 South Carroll Road here in downtown Villa Rica. I say downtown, I'm 1 block
Pretty close.
this way. I'd like to start by saying, I'm not sure if it's required or not, but I think it's just fair to disclose that I am a commissioner on the Historic Preservation Commission, but I want to make perfectly clear that I in no way, shape, or form am here in an official capacity. I do not have, I'm not speaking on behalf of the HPC or the City of Villa Rica, but actually, on this one occasion, my wife gave me permission to speak on her behalf. So I'm speaking on behalf with limited power of attorney on behalf of my wife and myself, and in no other way. So to get this clear, my wife and I strongly support the creating of both a national and historic district covering the areas as identified in the map that's been handed out by the city to us residents. And I'd like to state something that's, I guess, ridiculously obvious, but I want to state that one very important fact to me is that we acknowledge, that we already have a local historic district. Whether we want to, it's been classified that as yet or not, it's there. We can all go on a little field trip across the street and see built in 1902, built in 1902, built in 1902, and this will carry out on the east, the north side, the south side, and for a couple blocks.
If you'll keep to that mic, we'll be able
sorry.
to hear you.
Okay, I thought my voice carried on its own. Sorry, thank you. So right now, I think, having said that, we're really here tonight only to debate whether or not we'll take steps to preserve that which has been handed down to us, that which has been entrusted to us. And I wonder, will we be the generation that ensures these beautiful buildings endure, or will we forever be remembered as those that squandered our inheritance and did not preserve it for those who are yet to come? Me personally, I see this as a moral issue as much as anything else. As we all see, across this beautiful country, we see this cancel culture taking hold. And I never thought I'd see Americans tearing down statues of George Washington and founding fathers and wanting to take down the Lincoln Memorial and destroy Mount Rushmore and so on and so forth. I'm not trying to be melodramatic, but this is what's happening from coast to coast. And I want to concentrate on our little town, what little town we've got here left, and preserve it. And I'm all for the growth of the city in the future, but we would not have a future if we don't watch out and protect our past. And I thank you all for your time and consideration.
All right, thank you, sir. And I'll point out, and I'll point to the previous gentleman too, that when we get to the public hearing, you also can speak then too, if you have any additional remarks. All right.
I've drained mine.
I got you, but I meant to say that earlier too, to the last gentleman that was here. All right, let's, Mr. Matthews, is this for the public hearing or public comments? Yes, sir. All right, is this Aaron McCullough? Public hearing? Yes, sir. And then Kip Berry, public hearing, sir? Or right now? Well, do it. Come on up. Name and address for the record, and we give you 3 minutes. Knock it out.
Good. Kip Berry, 2266 Fairburn Road, Douglasville, Georgia. The HPC, I think it's a great idea. I own Chat and Chew there, which was the old Berry's Pharmacy. And we tried to recreate the history by actually putting the facade on that was actually built in 1890, and we're very proud of it. And I think if the HPC, as long as you don't become hysterical, I think it's good. I served in the city of Douglasville for 15 years on the HPC, and we had to redo some things, but we finally got some things that were very reasonable. I think as long as the committee stays with those, and I think it's a great idea. So I certainly support the additional HPC, I guess, on the south side of town.
District, yes, sir.
Yeah. Thank you.
All right, well, thank you. You had a few extra minutes there. All right, and I tell you what this looks like, but I'm not sure it's correct. Is it Otis Redding? That name sounds so familiar. Come on down and, you are? Okay, all right. Then we'll wait, all right. And then, the last person on my list is, Woody Holland. Yes, sir? Okay. Want to wait as well? All right. I've reached the end of my list. Is there anybody here who wishes to speak during the public comments portion of the meeting? All right. Well, wait a minute. You've already spoke. But wait for the next one. You can speak. All right. So I'll close the public comments portion of the meeting, and we'll move on in the agenda. All right. So earlier, let's let council get their words in. Is there any council members who would like to give council updates or speak now?
Just mention.
Ms. McPherson.
It's not specific to Ward 3, but it was just about 3 months ago that I had an online meeting with a representative from Colonial Pipeline, having no idea how significant that pipeline was that runs from Texas up the eastern seaboard and may make a difference into whether you get fuel in your tank this week. But I took the meeting with him because I thought, well, this runs through our area. And at first I thought I was talking about the gas line, which it really does run right through Villa Rica with Atlanta. But anyway, it was very interesting. That's when I learned about where it was, right on the Paulding County side, how much fuel it carried, how important it was and vital to our country. And here we are in an instance this week when we're wondering if we're going to be able to get fuel, that sort of thing. But anyway, I just thought that was important that we know those type of things do run through our community, even if it's on the Paulding County side, and it's important that we know what's around us here and how it impacts the rest of the country and how we need to protect it in our area. That's all.
All right. Anyone else? Okay. Hearing none, I'll close the council updates portion, and I'll move on in the agenda. So earlier today at 3 o'clock, the council met in a work session and reviewed a number of items that were agreed to be placed onto the consent agenda. That means that these items have no objection from any council member. So I'm going to read through this consent agenda, and then I will ask for any objections or a motion to adopt that consent agenda. Item number 1 on the consent agenda is the ordinance to create a sidewalk account. Item number 2, purchase of traffic calming radar signs for Punkintown Road. Item number 3, replace an existing member of Convention and Visitors Bureau Board. Item number 4, 2021 Downtown Development Authority Board appointment. Item number 5, fill vacancy on the Library Board. Item number 6, city employee discount for parks, recreation, and leisure programs. Item number 7, fiscal year 2021 budget amendments, numbers 124 through 131. Item number 8, election of GMA's District 4 officers. Item number 9, increase in GFL rates. Item number 10, increase in sanitation rates. Item number 11, approval of professional services agreement with Croy Engineering. Item number 12, approval of task order number 1 with Croy Engineering. Item number 13, approval of task order number 2 with Croy Engineering. Item number 14, approval of supplemental cyber liability insurance through Crum and Forrester. Item number 15, establish the qualifying dates and early voting dates for the general election to be held on Tuesday, November 2nd, 2021 for ward seats 3, 4, and 5. Item number 16, approve intergovernmental agreement with Douglas County for tax collection through the Tax Commissioner's Office. Let me say, before I ask for any objections or a motion, some of these, when I read these off, they don't seem very clear to me, and especially if I didn't watch the work session. So for the public, you can go out to the city website and be able to read all of the backup data for each of these items, such as board appointments. So you might know who it was that was actually appointed. We'll try to correct that in future consent agendas. Okay, are there any objections to that consent agenda? Hearing none, is there a motion to adopt that consent agenda?
I move to adopt the consent agenda.
Second.
All right, I have a motion to adopt the consent agenda as presented and a second. Is there any discussion? All in favor? That is unanimous. And with that, we have erased about half of the agenda. That's the early work we did. All right, now we're going to move on to tab B, which is the governing body. B1 is discussion of cover sheets used for board member appointments. This was Councilwoman Leslie McPherson. We had a discussion about this earlier today in the work session, so hopefully this will be an abbreviated version of that. My proposal, Councilwoman, and really the rest of the council, is that we would remove the name in the motion, but have the recommendation in the cover sheet. That way, when the motion is made, it would read something like this: move to approve the appointment of the person in the cover sheet. That way, we can still put it on the consent agenda. If I take the name completely out, I can't put it on the consent agenda. Would that be acceptable to you?
Absolutely, that works perfect.
All right.
The recommendation is there, but we fill in the name with the motion.
Okay, do we have a written motion for this, or can you take it from there? All right, do we need a vote on that?
No.
All right, I think we're good. All right, so you're good with that, and I'm good, everybody's good with that? All right.
I got a comment.
Yes, sir.
My thought is that for the subject line, that we could change that to reference who we're replacing, right?
Okay,
Otherwise, you're gonna have the same issue of looking at the thing and nobody's gonna know what you're talking about. It's gonna say, appoint somebody to the library board,
okay.
but we could at least put something in there so that when we look back someday in the future,
Yeah.
maybe we'll have a clue, when we see it, that's what we're looking for.
Well, let's do this. Let's make sure that you accomplish what I just said, but you have a little extra latitude to improve it if that's necessary. Okay. All right. Let's move on now to B2, approval of April 13, 2021 regular city council meeting minutes. Council, you've had an opportunity to review those minutes. Is there any changes? Any objections? Is there a motion?
Move to approve the minutes of
April 13th?
April 13th, 2021 as presented.
Second.
All right, I have a motion to approve the April 13, 2021 regular city council meeting minutes and a second from Councilwoman McPherson. Is there any discussion? All in favor? That's unanimous. All right, now we'll move on to the fun ones. If anything here is fun. All right, C1, community development, Bobby Elliott, but this is probably going to be Ron Johnson. Come on up. RA-01-21, parcel number V02-007-00212, Highway 61 and Highway 101 at Leggett Drive. This item will have a public hearing. Ron, would you briefly introduce this item?
Sure. Rockhaven Homes, LLC of Brookhaven, is requesting a rezoning of a 21.74 acre vacant parcel from commercial medium density C2 to single family attached SFA1, and as well as 4 variances for reduced front yard setbacks, reduced townhome widths, reduced building offset, and reduced distance between buildings. And they're proposing a 210 unit townhome development on the parcel.
All right, what is the recommendation?
Staff recommends denial of both the variances and the rezoning.
All right, council, does anybody have any questions for Ron?
Ron, you said,
Mr. Young?
thank you, you said 4 variances, but the cover sheet says 2.
How many variances are there? I thought there were 5.
No, there's one rezoning and there's 4 variances. I see on the cover sheet it says 4 variances here under purpose.
All right, while he's looking at that, is there any other questions for Ron? Ms. McPherson?
Between the two, can we approve one, not the other? Is the zoning separate from the approval of the
That's correct, yes.
townhomes themselves or whatever? Okay, or the variances, I should say.
All right, Mr. Young?
Yeah, my civic clerk says 2 variances.
Yeah, same here, Ron. It does say 2 variances.
I'm not sure why that would be. I submitted my revised copy. Do you see under date where it says, does it say March 30th, 2021, revised May 7th?
No, it says March 30th, 2021.
I submitted a revised version
Is it
of that for
possible
May
it's in the work
7th.
session agenda? Would somebody look at the work session agenda and see if it's there? The updated version?
Yeah, we got left off the last two.
That's what I thought.
4 and 5's off of it.
There were 5.
Yeah.
Yeah. The work session is correct.
The work session.
All right, the work session is where it's at.
They'll come off the work session.
All right, so now that we've got the right one, if you want to see this, go to the work session agenda
Okay.
and pull up this item. Is there any other questions for Ron? Okay. Seeing none,
And the applicant is here to give a presentation tonight.
okay. Let me, the council to give a presentation?
Yes.
All right, well, come on up.
My name is Joe Fowler. I'm a lawyer in Douglasville. This is a request from Rockhaven to rezone this 21.74 acres. There are 4 variances, and I'll talk about those in just a minute. Joining me tonight is Mr. Brad Hughes. He's an official with this company, Rockhaven Homes, and then Jeff Matthews, one of the owners of the property, along with Otis Redding, who's on the dock of the bay back there.
That's what I was thinking.
I knew you were. The property is zoned C2. It has been zoned to that classification for
Let me get you to
basically-
adjust that mic just a little bit so people can hear you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's been zoned to that classification for roughly 25 years. During that time frame, it's been marketed for sale many times, but there were never any serious suitable buyers. So it's been sitting as zoned for a long time. Short time back, you may remember the city itself moved to administratively rezone the 22 acres to light industrial. Jeff and the co-owner, Burnell Redding, wanted to leave it as commercial, and ultimately the city acceded to that request. And if it's all right, Mr. Mayor, with your permission, may Mr. Matthews come up and give you a brief summary of all of that at this point, and then I'll come back up.
Absolutely, always love hearing from Mr. Matthews.
He may take up an offering when it's over, so be clear.
But we are going to need a timer to go up because he's long-winded.
Yeah. Hey, my name's Jeff Matthews, 215 West Bankhead Highway, Villa Rica, Georgia. And I did bring somebody famous, bringing Otis Redding. He's actually Burnell's son, Mike. Burnell is in failing health, and Mike wanted to be here this evening. So if you have any questions, but my brief historical perspective is pretty much the same as you've heard on a couple of other pieces of property. Burnell and 2 fellas bought this piece of property from one of the old mills back in 1989, and then one of those other 2 folks passed away and one wanted out, so I bought his seat at the table in 1993, and we have subsequently held this piece of property for a long time. It hasn't been an overnight success. We have passed on commercial ventures such as impound yards, truck parking facilities. Love trucks, we need them. Certainly hope they bring some fuel this week, because we do have some situations there that none of us were anticipating. But we have, in marketing this piece of property, we have tried every avenue, and we've had it with CBRE and Jones Lang LaSalle, all the major national brokerage firms, and we just haven't gotten the right fit. And so we thought we'll try something different. And now, with the need for housing in Villa Rica, which is at a critical level, we came along with Rockhaven Homes. They build, and these homes on this piece of property would start in the mid to low 200s, and probably with the price of lumber and concrete and insulation going up, there's, hopefully they would still be able to hold into that range. But we do have we got a planning and zoning board approval of 3-2. I noticed it was an NA on the application. And I know that there's been some question about the comprehensive plan and whether it meets the comprehensive plan and variances, but when I hear the word comprehensive plan, I think about that thing I used to read when my kids were little. It said some assembly required at Christmas. There's just a lot of what ifs and therefores that may not show up in the first rendition. So I noticed that we've got another amendment to the comp plan down the agenda here tonight. So I think the comprehensive plan, and I appreciate the Planning and Zoning Board seeing down the table a little bit so that they would see that this type use is good, it is appropriate, and it will create a really good ripple effect for the rest of the historic downtown area. It will create a ripple effect because each time we bring in a new homeowner who hopefully has some disposable income after buying gas this week, then that person will spend money. They will live in Villa Rica. This will be single-family homes for sale. They will have a homeowners association from day one. So we anticipate that this will be a net positive for the city of Villa Rica. You hear a lot about the ripple effect or really they call it the multiplier effect in industrial, but you can tell when you have a new neighbor, you begin to see some corollary benefit economically. And that's what we need, or I think that it is a good thing for this side of Villa Rica. There will be that bounce, if you will, or that multiplier effect from new residents and new sources of income. It's on the correct side of the highway as far as the sewer services. It's on the north side. It would feed the west plant, which has plenty of freeboard and open space for sewer service. And so it really seems to be a well-located piece of property for this intended use. And if Otis has a song he'd like to sing, I'll yield the floor to him. All right, and then if you have any particular questions, either Mr. Fowler or Mr. Hughes can try to answer those. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir.
Well, let me ask, does anybody have any questions for Mr. Matthews? All right, Mr. Fowler?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Rockhaven builds single-family homes from the 200s to the 300s and above with 4, 5, and 6 bedrooms in the metro area, plus townhome communities from the 200,000s. It currently has completed 27 projects for an estimated total of 3,500 homes. Here is the site plan, Mr. Mayor. Just make it stand up wherever you think it's good.
Just present it from over there.
The plan anticipates the construction of 210 townhomes, and this is a drawing of what is proposed. Given the setbacks.
Hold on, can y'all see that? Would y'all like them to come down a little?
Good.
I think we have it attached.
Do we have this?
We have a revised
Not in
site
color,
plan.
but
I don't think,
yeah.
okay. All right, continue.
Given the setbacks, the stream buffer that you know exists across the front, the width of that right-of-way, and the other development conditions imposed by the ordinance, it results in a density of 9.6 units per acre. The ordinance, as drawn, would permit up to 379 units on this property. The homes would be 3 bedrooms, 2.5 baths, 9-foot ceilings on the main floor, open concept living spaces throughout, crown molding, kitchen island, double sinks, but a single-car garage. The townhomes will be sold as fee simple. The starting price that I mentioned a moment ago, they are designed with what they call smart home technology, everything from remote temperature controls, indoor and exterior security with 24-hour security monitoring. The amenities proposed for the property will include 3 or more of those suggested by the city's development ordinance. When you look at the code, there's some things from which you can select, as you know. And you also see this massive green space that's on the property, separating it from Industrial Boulevard. Now, about the variances, I'm certain that's a concern for the staff, and it's a concern which led to their recommendation in part, I suppose, but also a concern for you as council members. You spend a lot of money to adopt an ordinance. What about variances and why? Let me just mention an explanation for all 4. First, Section 9.032E requires staggered fronts of buildings in both the multifamily and single-family attached home districts. They must stagger or move back and forth like this. So the ordinance is drawn to paint the picture for both apartment complexes and townhomes in the same way with a 20-foot stagger. That would mean each building would have to move back 20 feet behind this one. Now, what we've done in response to the ordinance is to change that from 20 to a 5-foot stagger back and forth. What the ordinance requires is much more than Rockhaven has ever done on townhome projects. They've done it on apartment buildings, you see them there, but not on townhomes. What you see here and before you is a proposed reduction from 20 down to that 5-foot stagger. And if that's a problem with the council, they've gone back to the drawing board a little bit and said they could do that as much as 2 additional feet, but that would be within the buildings to provide that articulation or staggering back and forth. One of the justifications for that is this. There's a significant problem created for controlling surface water between the buildings where those buildings are that far apart. You have to shape the topography so that the stormwater flows to the appropriate places. Brad can talk about that more in a minute if you wish. That's the reason for the reduction of the stagger from 20 to 5. That's number one. We ask you to support that. Number 2 requires 40 feet between the buildings. That applies both to apartment complexes where that's more common, but it also applies in this code section to townhomes. Rockhaven has requested 20 feet, which in their experience with the hundreds of homes they've built will be and match the common distance between townhomes in their experience. The justification in part is that this has been a hard site to develop because of that wide, large right-of-way on Industrial Boulevard and then the stream buffer crossing the front of the property. In a sense, the townhomes still substantially less, almost half as many units as are provided in the code, 210 versus 379. They are still at a density of only 9.6 units per acre, which is possible in part because of the reduction in the width between the buildings. Of course, when they are that distance apart, they still meet all fire code regulations. Now, 4.06, that's the third of the requested variance, requires townhome widths of 24 feet. Rockhaven has requested 20 feet, noting first that the homes will be constructed with that state-of-the-art amenities that I described, but they'll also be built with the attractive front features that I noted earlier. There is no request here to vary the square footage of the houses. All of that is being met. The only request is that they lower the width from 24 to 20 feet. And then finally, number 4 requires the townhomes to be set back 25 feet from the edge of the right-of-way. Rockhaven requests a reduction to 20 feet. Now let me note with respect to that the following. With the stagger on every other building, the setbacks will be met on every other building. They will of necessity be 25 feet back. In some instances, they could be 27 feet. Secondly, the setback is from the edge of the right-of-way, not from the pavement. At the edge of the pavement of the street, there'll be a grass strip of 2 or 3 or 4 feet, and then a sidewalk, 4 or 5 feet, and then 3 or 4 more feet of grass till you get to the edge of the right-of-way. Then it'll be set back. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Then it'll be set back 20 feet from there on those that don't have the 5-foot stagger. I know that the city, I think the ordinance was adopted in 2020 perhaps, and it's not unlike what Jeff said with respect to comprehensive plans. You take recommendations from advisors, you look carefully at it, you adopt it, thinking there'll never be a need for a variance. But when site conditions like this come along, we respectfully request you to adopt these 4 variances and approve the rezoning with those variances. Specific questions are from the expert. I'm just giving you an overview.
Okay, all
Thank
right.
you.
And that was what I call a comprehensive overview. So I'm going to ask the council if you have any questions for Mr. Fowler or Mr. Hughes.
I have a question.
Ms. McPherson.
I read all this documentation ahead of time. I didn't have what you've presented this evening. So that's the first I'm hearing of explanations of why you want each one of these variances. My question is this: have you at any time prior to tonight met with staff and presented the reasons on why, what you're telling us now? Has that come to staff where they understood what your reasons for or justifications or whatever you wanted to, in your sales pitch argument for the reason these variances were either needed or make sense? Has that occurred?
We had a meeting with staff. I've had a number of telephone conversations with Ron, and we met with staff one time. I did not go over this list as I had explained it tonight.
Okay.
And also, Brad Hughes of Rockhaven Homes.
Is that mic on?
It
It should be a
was.
bright light.
Green. Oh, there we go.
There you go.
Brad Hughes, Rockhaven Homes, 2021 Flightway Drive, Atlanta, Georgia. We've met with Ron several times, and from my understanding, it's not that they disagree with what we're asking for. It's just the way the code is currently written. It doesn't leave him much leeway to go any other way but what his recommendation was. And to further explain some of the variances, the width, and Mr. Fowler did a great job. The International Building Code, the IBC, which is what all jurisdictions go by on the building side, their width between buildings is normally 10 feet, sometimes 20 feet, and that's more for fire safety reasons. So fire can't jump from one building to another. And if it's at 10 feet, you have to have a 1 hour fire rated wall on the outside of the building. So we're asking to go from 40 feet, which is, I've never have seen that in any other jurisdictions or municipalities that we've built in. Normally it's somewhere between 10 and 20 feet is pretty much standard common building separation for any single family, whether it's attached or detached homes. And again, also on the offset of the buildings, being a 20-foot stagger is a huge stagger. And like Mr. Fowler said, it does present several issues, not only massive long driveways, but also the grading and the drainage to get everything to work, right. And then also the streetscapes. It's going to look odd going down, having one building, 20, 25 feet, and then another building 20 feet behind that, set back, 40, 45 feet from the right-of-way. And as Mr. Fowler explained too, the right-of-ways, normally from the right-of-way to the road's about 13 feet. So just townhomes are, made to be kind of pulled in, close into the road. And we designed it, and the exhibit shows on here, you still have a driveway that you can fit a car and a full-size truck or SUV in the driveway with the 20-foot setback and still be behind the sidewalk. You won't be hanging over the sidewalk. And to us, that's what we design all of our developments to. We want to be able to have a car or a truck or a Suburban or whatever, be able to fit in the driveway and not hang over the garage. So people can still, walk down the sidewalk and not have to walk in the road around a car and back out. So that's what this is designed for, and it's very, very common. It's not like it's, an unusual, request. It is for Villa-Rica, but, and I think y'all are working on, updating that.
So, Mr. Hughes, let
code, so.
me just clarify, because I understood Mr. Fowler, and that's why I want to clarify my question. I know y'all have met, talked about the plans, the design, everything else. What I'm asking is these reasons and these explanations that were not in my original documents of why you want these variances. Has that been gone over with staff, with the explanations of this is why we want this variance, this is why we want this variance? Has that happened?
I would think so. I'll defer to Ron to see what his recollections, but I think we've gone over it on the phone and in different meetings, yes. But maybe we didn't in enough detail.
All right, do you have any other questions?
Not for me.
All right, does anybody else have any questions?
Did
Miss
would you all,
Marchman?
if you all talked to planning and zoning, the reasons that you said you didn't do this, did you explain those reasons to planning and zoning?
Yes, I feel like we did, but again, so.
All right.
I have a question.
Mr. Montahan.
You mentioned earlier, Joe, I think that there will be a homeowners association, townhome association, wherever it may be. Would you be willing to agree that that part of the covenants for that association would put some sort of cap on non-owner occupied homes?
Yeah, and then we've done that in other communities, but yeah, it will have, again, to reiterate, not to take your time, Mr. Mayor, but these are going to be, fee simple for sale, townhomes. We don't do any, rental properties. So we sell all of our, everything we build is for sale, fee simple units. And we'll also have, it is the mandatory HOA, that'll be paid on a quarterly basis or yearly basis. And also, every time a unit sells, part of, I don't know what the fee amount is, but that also is paid to the HOA every time a unit is sold. So.
Right, but fee simple itself doesn't necessarily stop someone from renting out the home.
Right.
So it's not necessarily, but I mean, would you be able to stipulate for that, your proposed HOA covenants would be some sort of percentage cap
I
on
think so, yeah. Like I said,
owner occupied?
We've done that before, so yes.
Okay.
Okay. Are there any other questions for either of these two gentlemen? Because I'm going to need to do a public hearing. All right, no more questions. Gentlemen, if you'll just have a seat, we may call you back up, we may not, we'll see. I'm going to open this up for a public hearing now. So if there is anyone here who would like to speak for or against this, this item, please come forward. We're going to give you 3 minutes. State your name and address for the record, and we'll give you 3 minutes to speak.
Mr. Mayor, Kip Berry, 2266 Fairburn Road, Douglasville. Me and my partner own 7 acres to the south of Mr. Matthews' property between Dollar General and that, and it's zoned commercial. And I would much rather see a planned residential community there than a bunch of strip shopping centers. We got too many of those now. So I would certainly recommend and accept that. And that would leave us where we could put a nice big grocery store there to service the, the community. So I would certainly support the proposal that they're putting forward.
All right. Thank you, sir. Is there anyone else here who would like to speak for or against this item? Yes, sir. Come on up, state your name and address for the record, and we'll give you 3 minutes.
Doug Lang, 262 South Cower Road, Villarica. Just a quick comment. I just want to make sure I understood the numbers right. So the separation was 40 feet apart between the buildings, and the buildings themselves, the homes themselves, were 20 foot wide. Is that correct?
Well, you just get to speak in this part.
Sorry?
You just get to speak.
Okay, so if I understood correctly, it was 40 foot wide. So personally, I'd love to see more housing in Villarica. I'd love to, for what the previous gentleman cited. I think it's great growth for the town, and it's wonderful. I would just have some concerns with the. It just strikes me as a little narrow, odd for the housing to be 20 foot wide, and I'm just wondering if that would maybe slow down sales, and maybe there'd be vacant properties there or something like that. That would be the owner's problem, but as a resident, it just seems odd to me seems a little narrow to me.
I understand. Thank you. All right. Is there anyone else here who would like to speak for or against this item? All right. I'm going to close the public hearing portion of the meeting, and I'll revert back to staff. Ron, if you'll come up. Let me just address something that we have, that Councilwoman McPherson brought up and that we have talked about here before. Your job as staff is to follow the ordinance and the code. However, I think that if you were to receive additional information, or maybe you would even suggest to the applicant, if you want to write a letter to the council, if you want something to be included in the packet, that could be helpful. But I get that there's really no reason for you to be advocating what somebody else is, But your job is to follow the code, follow the law, and recommend based on that. That's what Tom makes you do. That's what you're supposed to do. But I think it is helpful for us to hear, and it wouldn't hurt to recommend to them to maybe provide us with something. Okay, it having come back to the council, is there any more questions for Ron? Mr. Young.
Ron, there's nothing about the property that would constrain them from designing a development that didn't require variances, correct?
To my knowledge and what has been presented to me, no. There is a stream that runs parallel to 101. It looks like their development, no matter what, couldn't, because of our stream buffer ordinance, of course, they couldn't get too close to that anyway. So they still would have the same amount of land to develop if they were to just reconfigure that. So we did have initial conversations with the applicant. This was months ago. And we also had several telephone conversations, email conversations, and things of that nature. They did submit with their initial application, which is included in your packets, a letter of intent, and also on your cover sheets under background. I did note the reasonings that they did give and the hardships for the two variances. I believe it was the townhouse width and also the front yard setback. However, they did, and you could see also in your packets that the applicant revised their application for the number of variances. So it went from 2 to 4, but along those, and that was actually very, very recently. I believe that was sometime within the last week or so. But we did have conversations about those via email, but we just didn't receive anything related to the actual hardships or anything like that in writing. So here we are today.
So the variances that are shown here are related simply to the number of homes they want to cram in there?
Not only that, I would say that it's also...
Well, if there was more spacing or whatever, then you would not necessarily have to ask for variance to setbacks or widths or... So there's not an issue with the property itself that says, I can't put a home there, well, they didn't ask for a stream buffer variance, so that's not a problem. It's just the sheer number of homes.
Correct. It is and again, it's not a density-related issue as far as the number of density, because they are very much lower than what the SFA zone would allow for. But because of this, I guess the size of this property and how many units, like you were saying, I think that really does impact it. That's probably the crux of this issue.
Okay. Are there any other questions?
Can it be other than a question?
Ms. McPherson, yes.
Okay, so just because we sit up here, I don't see ourselves as the leaders, and certainly not rulers. We are representatives for the citizens, okay, wrestling with these complex issues. The zoning issue, I don't think I have a real problem with, because I want to be very careful about us telling people there's lines to be drawn about what they can and cannot do with their property. And that's part of what we wrestle with, right? Because we're not kings up here, right? And we're trying to follow guidelines that we have. The zoning, I don't see as that drastic of a change with a property that's set there for that amount of time and everything. I am struggling with the number of variances without prior justification that I didn't get ahead of time. Same reason I don't go into a car dealership and they say, you buy today. No, I just got that information. It's hard for me to buy today when I didn't know maybe some of those other things that needed to be taken into consideration. And so, Ron, what I'm saying to you, whether it's verbally or in writing, because I don't feel like I got that, do you have anything else? Were you aware of some of these things, whether it's water, the way the water needs to flow, or, trucks and cars not hanging out over roads? Those are things that I want to know. And I want you to know so that you can tell us when we're discussing this. That's the problem I'm having with the variances.
Let me just take a minute, and sir, I see you, and I will give you another chance, but let me ask the city manager to talk about this a little bit.
So the process for the variance begins with the variance application where that's stated.
Justification, or I'm asking for this variance because.
Right.
It should be on the application.
And if the reason that you want to do it is to get more units on the site, that's not typically justification for a variance. So you wouldn't write that on there, even if it was true.
All right.
So the better argument would be we've never seen this before. That, I mean, to me, that's a legitimate comment. You know, the 40-foot versus 20-foot versus 10-foot. If you've never seen it before, I think that's a valid and appropriate comment to make in the application for your justification. But if all you do is just ask for the variance and you haven't justified a legitimate reason other than, you know, we want more units, then it puts you in a bad place.
If I could just point out also, and it's on page 14 of the planning report, there are 3 sections of our zoning ordinance, or actually it's one section, but there's subsections underneath it that directly speak to the issue of giving out variances and the criteria behind variances. But I'd like to bring your attention to the 3rd one, which is practical difficulty. The strict application of the terms of this ordinance will result in a practical difficulty in the use of the property. This situation shall not be self-imposed, nor be based on a perceived reduction of or restriction on economic gain. So a huge part of my recommendation to you for the variances was specifically because of that. I didn't see that they met the proofs of benefits versus detriments, in addition to it appearing at least that these were self-imposed in nature. So that's why my recommendation was the way that it was for this.
I remember that from planning, when I was on planning and zoning, because we'd have to read all those criteria to help guide us in making a decision, and that was one of them.
So,
All right.
I'm looking at
Mr. Young.
I'm looking at the variance application. It says, these requested special exception variances will permit the proper construction of the proposed townhomes given the size and configuration of the property on which the homes will be located. I've never seen that before.
Yeah, that's
Well,
what
you
I was
said
going
that
to get
tonight.
to.
All
The
right.
revised variance application, I don't see, I guess, the rationales that were provided this evening. Perhaps, I'm looking at the document titled Revised Variance Application 5721. Per Tom's comments, I guess that's where the initial assertion of, for the basis for the variance applications would be included. Would you agree with that, Ron?
I would agree to that.
Yeah. So it says, for example, describe proposed special exception, and then it gives each exception that they're seeking, but it does not say the basis for that. So unless there's another document, maybe I'm looking at the wrong spot, feel free to inform me, but.
All right. Anything else from council? All right. Mr. Hughes, I'm going to give you just a minute if you want to hit anything that you need to rebut or clarify or anything, because I noticed you were jumping up and down, so.
Yeah, well, to Councilman Young, it has nothing to do with density, fitting more density on there at all, 0. As we can get 379 units on it. It's strictly the streetscape, the orientation of the development, and strictly the way the code's written. It's not geared towards townhome developments. It's more geared towards apartments, not townhomes. And I'm not, again, I know we're here before y'all in Villa Rica, but that's a massive separation. To drive down the street and have a building, 20 or 25 feet from the back of right of way, and then drive 100 feet and have another one set 45 feet back is going to look terrible. It makes no sense. And then drive another 100 feet and have another building set up 20 feet, and then again staggered back 20 feet the next building. It's the offset doesn't make sense. On top of, again, from a development drainage standpoint, that is a big deal when you have one building set here, and you have another building 20 feet behind it that's going to stick out 20 feet from the rear of the next building to get water to drain around it to the front is a huge deal. It's just not a simple fix to be able to do it. That's a massive development issue to be able to grade 20 feet behind an existing building and still have a flat backyard and have all that for people to live in. You're gonna have to go another 20 feet, so you're really 40 feet to be able to have a flat backyard and then have drainage swells around it. So that's it. But if you can envision driving down the street and having those buildings offset that much. You don't see that in the townhome developments anywhere. And I apologize for not having a very clear description in the variance request.
Oh, you're good.
But that's the request. It has nothing to do with density at all. And,
right.
But we would respectfully
I
request
think we're
y'all's
clear
approval
on
for that
that,
tonight.
on that particular item. Does anybody have any questions for him? All right, thank you, sir.
I have a question, I'm sorry.
Mr. Mompton.
I was waiting over there, I apologize. So, just to kind of get off the variance topic for a second, kind of go back to the rezoning, what would be your proposed cap provided for in your covenants for non-owner occupied homes that you would be agreeable to?
I don't know. We can.
Have you done it before, you said, though, in previous developments?
Yeah, and I don't know. It's somewhere around 10-15%, I think but I don't want to say that without double checking, but that's what comes to mind right off the top of my head.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you, sir. All right. This proved to be a little bit more complicated than I thought. Mr. Barber, go ahead.
I need Chris.
All right, that's a good idea.
All right,
Possibly Bobby,
Because I
to
do
talk
wanna
about
hear-
this water issue.
Well,
Chris, I got a question.
all right, let's go ahead.
So after hearing all this stuff, in your preparation of text amendments for what we passed in 20, which of these things are you hitting?
I'm not clear
This-
on your
the
question.
articulation, the building separation, are you hitting any of that?
Well, if I may take that a step further, we've got in 2 agenda items from now, an amendment to the single-family attached ordinance, which actually does address the setback between buildings
To what?
to 20 feet,
From what?
from 40.
So that's one of the variances, right?
Yeah, that might have
Correct.
been good
So you're
information.
good with that?
Yes.
All right, and then how about the articulation?
The articulation was intended to break up a monotony or linear view of facades. What we've done in other cases where we have permitted some modifications or some reductions in that setback is where the actual architecture of the buildings themselves are much more articulated. That's really not something that's addressed in any changes we're going to make, but it's something I think we can be flexible with. One thing I did want to point out is that we did have a pre-development meeting with these folks a couple of months ago and expressed some concerns with respect to the straightaways of how the street pattern was laid out and how there were concerns on our part with respect to pedestrian safety within the development, that you would have these long linear roadways that would be conducive to higher levels of speed within the development. And one of the recommendations that we also had was with the design of the development that, as it was presented, where they had the amenity section off to one side and everything else was kind of like centrally located with the housing. And we recommended that from a design standpoint, they may consider putting the amenities as a central component to the development and then have the road network sort of articulate around that, which would help reduce the traffic speeds, but also open up lands that they were also going to build towards their amenities that could re-articulate or reorient the how those buildings were sited, which would add to I think a better quality design, but still allow them to retain the number of units that they wanted to incorporate in the development. Those are my only 2 comments that I had related to that. Not sure if I answered your question, Tom.
All right, we're not changing minimum building width, right? So it's going to stay at 24.
That's correct. I think what that was intended for was, the townhouse developments that we have in downtown currently have more of a profile where they have an entry stair and then they have a 2-car garage. So I think that was sort of the standard that we were going with from a development model of having the 2-car unit plus the entryway. And what this product is a 1-car unit and an entryway, which would lend itself to a much more narrow footprint. But again, that's really development specific and taste specific as far as what the market would want to see.
All right, I think that's good information. Council, do you have any questions for Chris? I don't want to be coy, but wouldn't Ron have known that you might be bringing these changes to the council? Let me just say it like this. You should make sure that if there's an item coming on the agenda, that maybe you communicate that it may change in a month or two anyway, because we at least would like to know that you might propose that.
Sure. And
Not that you can do it, but that you could propose it.
Well, again, this ordinance, the text amendment was originated in February. It went through the planning commission already, so that's already been cycled through. And it's been to the city council now 3 times. So I don't think that there should be a lack of knowledge about what is, moving forward in the process.
Yeah, it should be part of the presentation. I can tell you that, regardless of whether you think somebody should have already known it.
Sure.
All right. Does any council members have any questions? All right. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you.
All right. Ron, you want to go back up? At this time, do we have anybody who wants to make a motion on these items? There are 5 different motions, it appears to me. Is that correct, Ron?
That is correct.
All right.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor,
Yes,
I would
sir.
say that, all of those motions could be taken separately or together. I mean, you don't have to vote on this as a package.
I feel like there's a possibility that there may be some changes because of each of these, but
Right.
I don't know. Let me take them one at a time. Thank you.
I'm prepared to make a motion.
All right. Ms. McPherson.
I make a motion to approve the request for Rockhaven Homes LLC of Brookhaven, Georgia, for a rezoning from C2 to SFA, single family attached.
Okay. I have a motion, as you have just heard it. Is there a second?
I second.
There is a second. Is there any discussion? Hearing no discussion. All in favor? All opposed? All right, that motion will carry. Is there a second motion? Does anybody want to make a motion? All right. If there are no additional motions, Mr. Mecklin?
The only thing I would add to it is that I've heard the concern expressed on the variance request that you don't have the information satisfactory to you to answer the questions. That may be your concern. If that's the case, and you do want them to provide you with additional information, that I think you could move to table the variance application request and reset it for another meeting. Don't have to do that, but that's at least an option
Well,
if that's truly the desire of the council.
I have some belief that there may be insufficient information here, and I would entertain a motion to table these variance requests 2, 3, 4, and 5 if anybody chooses to do that.
Yeah, I'll make a motion to table the variance request to our next meeting. I think is going to be in July, though.
2, 3, 4, and 5.
Yes.
I'll second that.
And I have a second. This is going to grant some additional time to put information in this packet before we make a up or down decision on these variances. I have a motion to table items 2, 3, 4, and 5, and I have a second. Is there any discussion?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am, go.
And I'm really glad we're going down this road. As much as I hate to drag you guys through multiple months of meetings, you also don't want us to make decisions with insufficient information or a lack of communication between you and staff. I hope that during this time, whether it's flexibility or justification, that there can be more discussion about where we feel like we can flex and where we think it's inappropriate. And the other reason being what I already told you, when I'm hearing stories from you all that I don't have in here, and I can't weigh that information ahead of time, I'm not buying it in 10 minutes. So I think this is important. I think this will give us some more time to hopefully get this right.
All right. Any other discussion? Okay. All in favor? All opposed? Any abstentions?
She approved.
I didn't see it. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Okay, thank you, Ron. Gentlemen, we'll take this up at the next meeting. Let me just suggest to you what I suggested earlier. It would behoove you, I think, to put your comments in writing and submit them to the council. I mean, you don't do that individually. You submit it to staff and they'll get it to us, or you can, there's other ways to get it to us. You can take it by City Hall. I think that could be helpful. You should be your own best advocate. It's really not staff's job to be your advocate. I mean, I guess you understand that. All right, thank you, gentlemen. All right, thank you. You got the next one too, Ron?
Yes.
All right. Here we go. C2, RA-02-21, parcel number V03-0100013, 1030 3rd Street, and there'll also be a public hearing on this one. Ron.
All right, so this application is for Carol's Metals Concepts, Inc. of Villa Rica, Georgia. They're requesting a rezoning of a 10.8 acre parcel from single-family R2 to industrial medium density I2. They are looking to construct a 19,125 square foot warehouse with associated offices measuring 5,670 square feet. They're looking at having access to Sabre Parkway through a land swap deal with 102 Sabre Parkway, and they'll cut off the 3rd Street entrance to the property as we know it and see it today.
Okay, I appreciate that. Council, does anybody have any questions for Ron?
Now, I would
Mr. Young?
I would just add that I would like a condition be added that they established a Sabre Parkway access and cut off 3rd Street access before they begin construction of the facility, so that there's no construction traffic on 3rd Street.
Is there any reason that that condition wouldn't be appropriate? All right.
That can be placed.
Any other questions for Ron? All right. When we get to that, we'll add that as a condition if we get that far, Mr. Young. All right. I want to do the public hearing now. Well, is the applicant here? Would the applicant like to speak? Well, then just hang out right there. I'm going to open this up for a public hearing. Is there anybody here who would like to speak for or against this item? Yes, sir. Come on up. Give us your name and address for the record, and you will have 3 minutes.
I'm Johnny Hightower, 228 Holiday Overlook, Villa Rica, and I'm the pastor of 102 Sabre Parkway Full Life Gospel Ministries, and I'm involved in land swap. And Kyrios, what they're doing is very friendly to the area, and I believe it would be beneficial to the neighborhood. That property back there has been landlocked in for several years, and I believe it's very workable, and I highly recommend it. Although, as we know, 101 traffic is terrible. The housing project concerns me more about the 101 project than this one, but I highly recommend it. Thank you.
I get that. All right, thank you. Is there anybody else who would like to speak for or against this item? All right. Seeing no one, I'll close the public hearing on this item. Ron, come back up. Council, do you have any questions for Ron? If there are no questions, I will entertain a motion.
I move to approve the rezoning of 1030 3rd Street, inclusive of the aforementioned conditions, which are to provide a landscape buffer and sufficient screening from adjacent residentially owned zoned areas indicated by the staff and by the Villa Rica zoning ordinance. Condition 2, successful subdivision of the subject property in accordance with and considerably similar to the concept plans submitted with this application. And condition 3, the establishment of access via Sabre Parkway and termination of access through 3rd Street prior to the construction of the facility.
Second.
All right. Okay. All right, I have a motion and I have a second from Mr. Carter. Is there any further discussion? All right, all in favor? All right, that is unanimous. I almost got slapped. All right. All right, thank you, Ron.
All right, thank you.
I think my mind is working in slow motion tonight because I'm trying to think through how I should handle when the change is, whether or not I should try to bring that up. All right, let's go on to C3, amendment to Article 3 to the Villa Rica zoning ordinance, and there'll be a public hearing on this as well. This is what Chris was talking about earlier that has been bouncing around for a little while.
Yes.
All right, go ahead.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. This item has been before the Planning Commission and the City Council on a number of occasions, and due to when this item was actually introduced back in February through the process, we got a little off on some of the timing of the public hearings and the public notifications and how those were processed. So we are prepared to move forward as I mentioned in the work session that this addresses the setbacks in the current single-family attached residential zoning. The problem was that this was sort of a hybrid off the old code, which was residential townhouse, which had certain setbacks, but two of the most significant things are the reduction in the distance between the buildings. As you know, it went from 40 feet down to 20 feet, which is more indicative of how, as the earlier applicant mentioned about distance between buildings and fire code. We also have some additional stipulations which actually increase those distances based on whether they're in fronting windows between the buildings that would actually add additional separation beyond 20 feet. Something else really that precipitated the changes in the text amendment were that the ordinance was originally designed to address really more of a fee simple type of a structure of ownership, and did not anticipate the current trend, which is more of a corporate style ownership of single-family attached townhouse apartments, which has become quite the trend lately. And the zoning didn't really take that into consideration. So when it looked at the separation between structures and the property lines, it was like 0 and 50 or 15 feet. So basically you were either attached or you were 15 feet away from the next structure. In a corporate apartment environment, that doesn't work because you have one piece of property with a bunch of buildings on it, and there's no separation of 0 or 15 feet, and we didn't want it to be interpreted as the buildings were then allowed to be 15 feet from the side property line. You know, irrespective of buffer requirements and things like that, just ran contrary to what we were intending to accomplish initially. So this revision, I think, adequately addresses both the corporate and the fee simple type of structure development, which is what we were intending to address with the code change.
Okay, all right, and this has been before us more than once. So, council, do you have any questions?
Chris.
All right, Mr. Momtahan.
Not to belabor the point, but since we will be hearing that application from Rockhaven Homes again in July, how does this affect those variances they were requesting?
Well, I think that they had mentioned that they were comfortable with a 10 to 15, 20-foot separation between buildings, given that there is going to be a reduction in the distance between buildings from 40 feet down to 20 feet, which is, I think, within their range of comfort. I think that variance will probably go away. With respect to setbacks, the code that we have now actually has a 35-foot setback from a local road, which would be back of curb in the case of a private street internal in a development. Mm-hmm. Again, we have the ability to be flexible to some lesser degree, but when it comes to variances that are in excess of 10 or 15% of what the code requires, it goes to the council as a variance request. One thing I would caution with that last application, though, is that when you couple variances with the rezoning, you run the risk of creating conditions of zoning that are really tied to the land that, should it not be developed towards that, are still going to be conditions tied to the zoning, which may not be an appropriate way to handle that administratively. But that said, That's really the thing that sticks out most is the distance between buildings.
Okay.
Okay. Any other questions? All right, I need to do a public hearing on this, so let me open this up for a public hearing. Is there anyone here who would like to speak for or against this change? All right, seeing no one, I'm going to close the public hearing, go back to staff, council. Any questions? I'll entertain a motion.
I move to approve.
Go ahead.
Okay. I move to approve the amendment to Article 3 Villa Rica zoning ordinance, Chapter 4, SFA, single family attached, and Table 4.4, modifying the lot area, setbacks, and distance between buildings.
Second.
Seems like a good sign when you have people racing to
Yeah,
get the
really.
motion in, right? All right, Mr. Carter seconded that. Is there any further discussion? All right, all in favor? All right,
Thank you.
that will be unanimous. Thank you, Chris. All right, let's move on to C4, VA-05-21, variance request for ServPro, parcel number 01470250019, Veterans Memorial Highway.
Ordinance for sidewalk account.
Did I miss one?
Number 4.
No, that went to the,
That
went to.
was on the.
It was on consent.
That was on consent. All right, let me do this. All right, go ahead.
Mayor, we have ServPro and the owner Ricky Wilson of Villa Rica requesting a variance from providing sidewalks along the Veterans Memorial Highway. The frontage along this highway is approximately 1,065 feet. Staff is recommending approval of this variance with the following two conditions: that the applicant will submit funds in lieu of physical sidewalk construction based on the footage, the property frontage, and that he also provides a 10-foot permanent easement along that entire frontage. If the sidewalk does materialize, he'll have a place to put it.
So you have clarified that?
The applicant's here, he will verify what I just said.
All right, that's good. That's good news. All right, do you have any questions for Bobby?
Bobby stole my thunder.
Say that again.
Bobby stole my thunder.
Bobby stole your thunder.
I think
All
I
right.
stole the applicant's thunder.
You got to be
too.
careful stealing thunder.
I know.
The elected officials get tense about that. Just kidding. All right, I'm not kidding. But I'm one of them, so. All right. Is there any, I'm going to open this up for a public hearing. Is there anybody here who wishes to speak for or against this variance request for ServPro? I'm a little surprised you're going to speak there, Aaron. All
Yes,
right.
thank you,
Go.
Mayor and
Let's
Council.
get your name and address for the record.
Absolutely, it's Aaron McCullough,
Yeah.
6554 East Church Street, Douglasville, Georgia. And of course, we are in favor of this variance. We are the consulting engineers for our client, ServPro. And we are in favor of that because of the impractical nature, which we presented and you guys have taken up as well. And we do acknowledge item number 1 on the consent agenda. And we absolutely want to thank, even though it might not have been at our speed, we absolutely thank both the staff for their hard work, council, and legal counsel, and also the city council for your flexibility and promptness for being able to get this fund in place so that we do not have to install a sidewalk to nowhere.
All right, and you do confirm that you are going to grant those easements?
Absolutely, I've confirmed that with the with our client this afternoon, and that easement we are in favor of that as well.
All right, well, I think we'll be fine. Is that
Thank you.
it?
Thank you.
All right, is there anyone else who would like to speak for or against this item? All right, seeing none, I'm going to close the public hearing. We don't necessarily have to hear from the applicant now, unless the council has any other questions. All right, if not, I'll entertain a motion.
I'm ready.
Here, we got another one.
I move to approve the variance request from ServPro, Ricky Wilson of Villa Rica, Georgia, not to provide sidewalks along the frontage of the property along Veterans Memorial Highway as required in the Villa Rica Development Code in lieu of contribution to the Sidewalk Bank Fund as hereby required.
All right, I have a
And
motion.
I think that you should add to that.
Yes.
Oh,
And with the contribution of the easement on the front of the property, just so we can document that in the record.
Sure, for this one.
As stated.
All right. Okay, so I have a motion by Councilwoman McPherson amended, and then amended as suggested by the city attorney. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, I have a second from Mr. Carter. Any further discussion? All right, all in favor? All right, that's unanimous. Congratulations, Aaron. I know it's been a little while coming, but there you go. Okay, and now, probably the star of the show. C5, ordinance to designate downtown Villa Rica Historic District, which also will have a public hearing. Is this Mr. Johnson, Mr.
Yes.
Ron? Go ahead.
Featured presentation here. Just to be respectful of the council and the mayor's time, I could pick up where we kind of left off at the work session, or I can, for the public, I can go over everything again.
I think you need to briefly go ahead and describe it, but you don't have to read the prepared
I got you.
statement.
So we have an ordinance tonight to designate 33 properties in the downtown on the north side and the south side of the tracks as a local historic district, which would be our first historic district in the city so far. Local historic district, that is. That would give the HPC the powers of design review for certificate of appropriateness applications on these 33 properties.
Okay, so this is not this item has significant backup in the agenda packet for everyone to have read and reviewed. It also has a public hearing tonight. Let me see if any council members have any questions for staff to start with. Mr. Momtahan.
Ron, at the first public hearing that y'all held on this, one of the concerns was the standard of review that is required to appeal the decision of the HPC. My understanding from a subsequent conversation was that that is the standard from the Georgia Department of Community Affairs. Is that correct?
Yes,
Or
the
have I right?
HPD,
HPD,
which is under DCA
okay.
now, yes.
Okay.
Mhm.
Did you, though, have an opportunity to do any further review to see what other communities and use for their standard of review?
I haven't reached out to other communities, but I did have a conversation with our contact at DCA under HPD, Paige Jennings, which did confirm also that appeals typically, all she indicated was that appeals typically go to the city council, and the appeals are generally only tied to misconduct, essentially by a HPC board or a decision that is made that is outside of the jurisdiction of the HPC or
Right.
something of that nature. Yeah.
Right. And so the standard that you're proposing here is what they refer to as an abuse of discretion standard. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And just, I don't know, other council members are aware, but basically it's a high bar for to overturn the review if someone wants to appeal it. Compared to other standards of review that could be less, and I'm sure David can kind of give a summary of those. But
All right.
that was a concern that was at then. I just wanted to verify that. So.
Let me just ask a question then from David. Are we bound to that exclusive standard for overturning an appeal?
No.
Or granting an appeal, I guess?
No, you can set the standard at whatever you want it to be. I can't tell you how it might impact how the state would view it, but you clearly have the right to set the review standard at what you choose to. And Matt's right, an abuse of discretion standard is a high bar to overcome so that it would be difficult for the council to ever overrule a decision of the HPC. You can set other standards that are different from that would give you, the council, more flexibility in either supporting or overturning the actions of the Historic Preservation Commission.
At what time would we be able to set those? Would we need to do that now?
At the time that you pass the ordinance, you would, I mean, essentially, if you're going to change the standard of review, we would need to amend the ordinance as written.
Okay. All right. That feels clear to me. Is there any more questions for Ron?
Ron, can you
Mr. Young.
describe the difference between a contributing and a non-contributing property?
Yes. So a contributing property, or let me back up to a period of significance is essentially what we're applying under the for the nomination report. We applied for a pre-1950s downtown, essentially. That's our period of significance. For any historic property, it has to be at least 50 years old, and 1950 is, of course, beyond that. In our heyday, it appears, based on the plaques that we see in the downtown, our downtown was basically built in and around 1902. So a non-contributing property would be a property that's outside of that time period. So that would be anything built or reconstructed in 1960s, 70s, et cetera, afterwards. So a non-contributing property would still be required to go to the HPC for a certificate of appropriateness. However, the level of scrutiny, essentially, on certain items that may need to be replaced would be completely much lower of a bar. It's just really to have a review process in place for those properties that don't contribute at all to that period in light of their neighbors that do.
Okay. Any other questions?
Yes.
Ms. McPherson?
Okay, so in going through the PowerPoint that was provided for you, the meeting that was held over at PAL, and reading these documents and everything, in a nutshell, this kind of historic district has no restrictions whatsoever on what's done inside that building. The business, they can, what type of business, they can remodel, do whatever they want on the inside.
Mm-hmm. That's correct.
This has to do with the outside. So whether you're contributing or not contributing, where it might come to the historic preservation is maybe I own a building there and, and it's our historic downtown or whatever, and I want to, make it purple with hot pink, parameter around it and all. And even though I might be non-contributing, I'm next to the contributing.
Right.
In the store. So is that where that kind of stuff would come into play so that we kind of keep that historic look downtown? Does that make sense? Is that kind of it in a nutshell?
Well, when it comes to paint, and I've advised the HPC about this since I came here, actually, that we can't govern paint. It's protected under the First Amendment of freedom of expression for any property owner. So that's something that we don't even address in the design guidelines for historic districts and sites that we adopted back in 2019. Because it's just not constitutional to do so. Sign colors are the same thing. The HPC can give recommendations. We have a color palette actually for signs in our design guidelines, but again, they're just guidelines. The HPC cannot require a sign to be any specific color. So that would really, I don't know if I answered your question 100%, but that would be one thing that's kind of off limits, though, would be the colors.
Okay, so if it was brick and the brick stayed the same color, that's not an issue. Mm-hmm. So in order to preserve the historical nature, just give a couple examples of the type of things that would distort that.
Sure.
That you'd want to preserve.
Right. So an example would be doors, windows, for example, flashing, roofing, paving, sidewalks even, anything that is an exterior change of materials, specifically change of materials or the overall changes to the aesthetic of an item. So, speaking with the HPC about this at length, and we've developed somewhat of a relationship with over the years since I've been here at least. They want to be very sensible with these types of applications. I know that there's been some issues in the past as far as things that have come to the HPC and they shouldn't have gone to the HPC and things of that nature. But from the trainings that they've gone to, and I've seen a change just from 2019, they're picking up on a lot of these things. They didn't know about the colors before. They don't want to become a burden to the property owners or the business owners that are out there. I know that's a huge concern. To a lot of business owners. We walked the entire downtown, talked to every single business owner out there. We talked to property owners, and they said just what Mr. Berry said earlier. They said as long as it's sensible, it's a sensible process, as long as it's not a time-consuming process, and one that just is not here to just burden people. And the HPC has understood that, I think. This will be our first, if we ever do get a certificate of appropriateness application, we would, I think that they would be on a much better footing than it has been in the past, especially prior to my tenure.
That's where the training comes in, so that's very good to have that. Okay, thank you.
All right, are there any other questions for Ron before I open this up to a public hearing?
I have one question that I'd like to ask, and I appreciate you raising it. I've looked at the ordinance that's here before you to vote on today, and I don't see that the standard of review is set forth in it anyway. And I'll confess error on my part. I should have raised this with Ron prior to now, but I just don't see it in the ordinance at all. And I think that's an important component that should be contained within the ordinance itself, which says, what happens if somebody disagrees with a decision of the HPC.
Ron, is it in there?
It's in the overarching historic preservation ordinance that the city passed in 2008. So that this is just specific to the 33 properties, but we have more properties than the 33. We did 10 back in 2019, for example. But I think that that would be addressed in the HPC's governing ordinance and bylaws.
And that makes sense, but this ordinance then should have some reference to the prior existing ordinance, just to make clear that that other ordinance also controls what the appeal process is in this one.
Is
Yeah,
that-
I mean, I
Is that the
absolutely-
5.29 historic preservation mentioned in paragraph 2, or paragraph 2 of section 1?
Yes, it's also on the first paragraph of the nomination report as well, which is required to be filed with the city and the state.
It probably is, but again, it's not set forth as clear as I would like for it to be.
So, I'm sorry.
Well, I'm very, you know how serious I am about making sure that we cross our T's and dot our I's. If you're not comfortable that we have either the proper reference to that procedure or some procedure in the document, I want you to say that you're not comfortable with it.
No, I am saying that I'm not comfortable
All right,
with it
that's-
and that it needs to be revised. I mean, I'm not speaking against the substance of the
No, I
ordinance at
understand.
all, but I think that it is critical. I've advised this council over and over again not to give away your power, and if that is not clarified, then you have given away your power to have any supervisory role over the decisions of the
Right,
HPC.
and certainly that wouldn't be the intent here tonight.
Right.
That has not been the intent of any of the discussion that has occurred. Okay,
David, I'm sorry, Matt.
Mr. Montana.
David, but in order, so my understanding from what you're saying is though, regardless of the outcome of how we vote on this evening, we would still need to go back and take another look at the historical preservation ordinance and determine what standard of review we would want.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, and that is a permissible modification to the ordinance is after, let's say it were to pass.
Right.
We can go back and modify the ordinance? Or should we do it?
You can, but I would say that you're better, and again, I feel like I'm betraying Ron here, but it's
No.
but that's part of my job, and I would advise you just to table it until we fix that first, so that you know what you're voting on.
All right, let me proceed now. I'm gonna do the hearing, and then we'll see where we're at, okay? Are there any other questions for Ron? All right, I wanna go ahead and do the public hearing. So anyone who would like to speak for or against this, please come forward, state your name and address for the record, and I'll give you 3 minutes.
Mayor and Council, Nancy Mims, and I happen to chair the Billerica Historical Preservation Commission. I would like to quote John Muskin. When we build, let us think we build forever, not for present delight nor for present alone. Let it be such work that our descendants will thank us, and as we lay stone on stone, a time will come when those stones are held sacred because our hands have touched them. Future generations will say, see, this is what our fathers did for us, unquote. The glory of a building is not the glory of the age. It honors the achievements of our ancestors and reinforces a connection that is more than stones. And that's what's happened here. HPC is also charged with preserving why things matter It can be a site, it can be a building, it doesn't make any difference. America's communities are working to save ever-expanding lists of cherished and important places that revitalize the neighborhoods and main streets. Just look at the television programs that we're seeing right now. Even Billerica tried to be part of their hometown. We are broadening our understanding of the past. We're finding ways to describe it that do justice to our citizens, to the past citizens, and even to the present citizens. Millennials are the largest and most diverse generation that we have right now, and they are interested in history. The significance of Billerica, the heritage, is important. It's what gives flavor to our city, and there are many reasons to keep and maintain and reuse old places. From the gold mines to the cotton fields, both of which were sent across our country from stations and buildings on Main Street and added to Billerica recovery. Main Street was the site of tourists coming to the Dude Ranch, the road taken by Eisenhower before he was president, the Freedom Bus, and providing off-streets to where Thomas Dorsey lived. It doesn't matter if the store fronts have different signs. One only has to visit several stores along Main Street to see pictures of the past, talk with old-time residents, and hear stories of what they did in those stores that are now home to new merchants. We are a pioneer city full of history that should be preserved not by buildings alone, but because old places matter. They embody our identity. They help us remember. When presented with works properly, it uses the past to make us not to make us nostalgic, but to make us feel that we live in a better present that has a broad reach and a connection to other eras. HPC is charged with a number of things. And we do have, all of us have now gone through training, with the exception of our two new commissioners. We hold workshops when we don't have any proposals, and that is to educate the people who are around us. So we have speakers. We have taken a page out of the National Trust for Georgia Historical Preservation, and that's what we do.
That was very good. He was down to about a second. Thank you. All right. Is there anyone else here who would like to speak for? All right, sir. Come on up. Give us your name and address.
One thing, I would like a little bit more time. I would like to have an equal amount of time as Mr. Johnson had.
Mr. Johnson, he's staff.
Well, I'm a property owner.
I understand, sir.
I have a vested interest
I understand,
in
sir.
this.
You got 3 minutes and it's moving.
This was the wishes of the owners of the building and was not coerced by any city administration. If they wish to or ask for assistance, they should be able to get it. I have two examples. The first was 507 Main Street. This is the first known, I can't get it in the time. The
Give us
bottom
some
line
chance.
is,
I'm actually writing it down
the bottom line is,
because I want to look. Go ahead.
I must admit, I find it interesting that all the buildings in the downtown district, this building 101 Main Street has been chosen for removal from the Historical Preservation Commission district. This building has much more historical significance than 90% of all the buildings in the city of Billerica. For it was the seat of government for several decades and still serves as a center for city government and public meetings and court proceedings. Therefore, since this building is an esteemed place in our city's history, can be removed from the historic district, we the petitioners request that our properties that has a substantially less historical significance also be removed. In closing, the following properties have asked to be removed from this district. My entire block of 209 Main Street, 419 Main Street, 105 Main Street, 208 West Montgomery Street, 210 West Montgomery Street, 301 Main Street, 309 Main Street, 118 West Montgomery. As an afterthought, I would like to pose an open question to the City Council. Is this building slated for removal in some time in the future? Thank you.
Thank you, sir. You're talking about this building we're in right now?
Yes.
I just want to make sure that's the one you're talking about. All right, thank you. All right, is there anybody else here who would like to speak for or against? All right, come on up. State your name and address for the record, and we'll give you 3 minutes, sir.
Israel Dickerson, 110 Timberlake Trail.
Yes, sir.
So I'm kind of mixed here. I think a lot of the recourse that you're getting from this is a lot of fear because people don't really understand the ins and outs of what the Historic Society is going to put on them as a building owner, and that's me included. I mean, I have done some research, but for a common person like me to sit down and read attorney lingo is not very comforting. You know, when I sit and I search it on the internet and things of that sort. And I'm all for preserving the buildings. So I'm actually Jane's, and everybody knows Jane's Buildings because I've seen it on every one of y'all's bad pictures, I guess, of the city. But and I am for improving it, and I'm going to try to improve it. But the thing is I'm all for preserving the buildings, but I don't know exactly how you're going to put your thumbprint on me. You know, it was kind of interesting to know you can't tell me I can't put the pink around the outside of the building, which, you know, that's not me anyway. But anyway, it's still kind of comforting whether I want to put brown or green or black. But I think my suggestion would be for the city to bring these owners and say, hey, this is, and have some sort of training of, hey, this is what, you know, we would like to do, and this is what the benefits, because nobody's told us what the benefits of these buildings are having this national society would do for us. And with that being said, it's going to cost money. Why do they want to invest thousands of dollars and not knowing why they're investing it or what it's going to benefit them? And when it gets back down to it, it's all about training and comforting these people that own these buildings. And I think that's where the city's lacking. And I just suggest that maybe you could, you know, get a little bit more support if you did that. That would be my suggestion. Thank you.
Well, thank you, sir. All right. Yes, sir. Come on up. Give us your name and address for the record, and we'll give you 3 minutes.
Okay. My name is Woody Holland. I live at 643 Old Chanyard Road, Villa Rica, Georgia. My wife and I own the building at 210 Montgomery Street here. When we bought the building, it was remodeled we think between the late 79s to the early 80s. By the Bank of Villa Rica, it became their computer office in there. They put rock all over the front of it, put aluminum frames around plate glass windows, used a modern entryway and everything. So it looks like a 70 building, okay? I'm part of that group that you mentioned, non-complying or whatever the word they use in there.
Non-contributing.
Yeah, non-contributing. But I still have to go ask May if I want to change the color of my windows or whatever. I think that's just like, makes no sense at all to me. I mean, you know, if you're non-conforming and you're whatever the heck you said. I did have one thing. My tenant wanted to change her sign back in 2019, I think, before Mr. Johnson came, I believe. Not sure about that. But the process, I was on council then, and I said, go talk to City Hall, figure out what you got to do, because signs are always a problem. And I told her to go down there, and she did. They said, you've got to go talk to the HPC. I never heard of that until that day, I guess. From the time she started till she finally got approval, it was about 3 months, because they only meet once a month. It was not a quick and easy thing. I had to sign different documents to make them happy that I was okay with whatever was going on. So it was a very convoluted process as far as I'm concerned. I had to had a conversation with the Johnson about the color, because that was the thing that the HPC had a problem with, and he explained the whole deal about you can't do it because of the Article 1 of the Constitution. So that makes me feel a little better, and then they can paint it pink if they want to, I don't care. But it kind of pointed out to me that the commission is not elected. We don't like you guys, we don't vote for you, and we vote for your competitor. They're there, you know, they only answer to you, not to us, the citizens, okay?
Right.
That's bad to me. But if I have to go back and ask for stuff to be done to my building, I'm opposed to this whole thing, okay? To me, Billerica would be taking away part of my property rights if they do this.
All right, thank you, sir. All right, is there anyone else here who would like to speak for or against this item? All right, seeing none, I'm gonna close the public hearing on this. So, given, you know, some of the discussion that we've had already, it is my hope that what we do here is table this and make sure that we put a provision in there for the appeals process so that there is the oversight of the council should anybody feel like they were not, they didn't get a fair hearing or whatever the process is. I would have expected that to be there. And I guess in some way it is there, but our city attorney has said, hey, I'd like to see it a little more clear. So I'm hoping that that's what we do tonight. But what I want to say up front, and what I would think most of these people up here would echo, is that one of the things that is very important to me is the individuals, owners of property, their rights. It's what I do, it's what my business is. So I'm always going to be hesitant about new restrictions. So I take that seriously, and I know that this council will as well, but there is a place for historic preservation. I don't know that it looks like what we're looking at here. I'm not going to prejudge that. But I do feel like I want somebody to make a motion to table this and have the city attorney put that provision in there for an appeal process. All right. Does anybody have any questions first?
If I could just add something that I
Yes,
think
ma'am.
might help somebody that did give public comments as far as explaining things to the business owners or building owners. Y'all went building to building, right?
We did. Mm-hmm.
And I found, I don't know if you've seen the PowerPoint, but the PowerPoint that I looked at both at the public hearing that you invited people to, and I redid it again for myself because I had to rush that evening. It was rather useful in explaining some advantages where you could qualify for certain grants, for fixing things up, restoring things. So it did have some of that. It may not have been sufficient. You know, people may want more information than that, but that is available. If you want that PowerPoint, get it from Ron. He can send it to you, resend it to me. I sent it to a citizen who wanted more information on exactly how this was supposed to play out.
Okay. Are there any questions for staff? Mr. Montan.
On the assumption that this matter will be tabled this evening, do we want to take an opportunity to give staff some direction as to how much, or what standard of review or how much deference we would want to give to the HPC versus on an appeal? You know, there are different standards, and David can articulate all those.
David, would you want to weigh in on that?
I would tell you that I would lean towards putting in the standard review similar to what you have from the Planning and Zoning Commission on zoning decisions now.
And I would feel comfortable with that. That feels broad enough to me.
I don't
Does
think
it
I'd
to you?
want to accuse
Plain-
HPC of malfeasance
Well, I mean,
in an appeal.
No. Yeah,
Planning and
we're not
Zoning
looking for
Commission,
that.
though, only makes a recommendation. They don't actually make an action.
Well,
Compare that to DDA or,
Right, but we wouldn't really want to take this up except on appeal.
No, I would say that I would write it up so that the HPC makes the decision, but that but the property owner does have the right of appeal to the city council on that same standard that, which is that you have the right to override them just based on exercise of your discretion.
okay, just de novo, basically.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah.
Well, okay.
I'm sorry.
All right, Ron.
I just want to confirm, we are looking at not only putting this inside of the ordinance that's before you today, but also to alter the language that's already in the HPC's bylaws and the historic preservation ordinance as well, because they would end up saying different things.
Well, we'll leave
I
that to
think we
Mr.
should.
Macklin.
Okay.
Yeah, I think we should.
If
This
that,
could be
if that's
multiple.
part of the full package, then
Yes.
that, bring that back to us. All right, let me see, can I get a motion on tabling this?
I move to table the ordinance to create a downtown Villa Rica Historic District as a local historic district.
Second.
All right, I have a motion to table this item to July, Mr. Young, to July, to the July meeting, and I have a second from Councilman Marshman. What I am going to say, and you don't have to say anything right now, because if you've already done it, we don't have to. I do want you to make sure you put out some kind of information to the public. Maybe you have a meeting or something, I don't know. I do think that people need to be fully aware. I know that we put a lot of information out there and people just don't read it. And if you've done that, I'm satisfied. I just want you to take this opportunity to do it if that hasn't been done. All right. Any discussion?
Real quick, I'm sorry.
Yes, sir.
Ron, if we do table this, though, will you have to redo these public hearings and all that stuff?
David says no.
I think that we may, because it has to be voted on within 15 days of the HPC voting on it, and the HPC had to move their regular meeting to April 27th in order to do so.
I have not read it to that degree. I will, I'm going to probably defer to Ron. If there's something that requires that the council vote on it within 15 days of the HPC, then I just don't know that.
Well, let me ask you this. Can you take it back, once y'all
Yep.
made the modifications, take it back to HPC 15 days before you bring it to us?
I can do that.
Will that
We'll make
work?
sure that we comply with the requirements before it comes back to you.
I suspected you might. All right.
Would it be, would it be better to table it to August to give them more time? I don't know.
I think this is plenty of time. We
Okay.
need to get moving on
60
this.
days should be plenty.
All right.
Okay.
All in favor? Any opposed? All right. That'll be tabled to July. Thank you, Ron.
Thank you. Thank you all.
All right, let's move on to, so we added C6. This is speed limit reduction on Punkintown Road. Several council people have been interested in this. Councilman Young brought it to me yesterday. And this item has had significant discussion, but I don't think it's been fully vetted out. So I am open to having some discussion tonight, see where we're at. He's asked to be able to take a look at this, and so let's do that. Councilman Young, I'm going to let you present, and then we'll get some input from staff, see where we're at.
We've had several traffic studies done on roads around Villa Rica. The one on Punkintown was actually done by the Department of Transportation, State of Georgia, August 24th, 2020, so not quite a year ago. In that study, they found out that using their 85 percentile rating, that the speed limit was appropriate for the speeds that people were driving on that road. However, they did point out in the study that the crash rate on Punkintown Road was 2.7 times higher than the average crash rate.
Mr. Young,
for-
just for a second, I just want to point out to the council that this was handed to you as a handout. So this is what it looks like. Yeah, all right, go ahead, I'm sorry.
so
I just want to make sure they knew they had it.
The crash rate on Punkintown Road is significantly higher than the Georgia statewide average crash rate. In that, 43% of the crashes were rear-end crashes. 18% were angle crashes where somebody hit another car at an angle, and another 18% were single vehicle, no other car involved, which did not say that speed wasn't a problem. In the conclusions for this, they stated, while 85% percentile speed along this road of section is above the current speed limit of 45 miles per hour, the average was 51. The high crash rates and substandard roadway conditions suggest that a lower operating speed for vehicles traveling along the facility could result in a reduction in crashes. It is recommended that the speed limit be reduced to 40 miles an hour. This would improve improve roadway safety without impeding operations, as over 88% of the vehicles travel within 10% of this recommended limit. Well, the average was 51, so the 85 percentile was 51 miles per hour, not 50. We know that street is a problem. We've had a catastrophic crash, and we have an obligation to address that, and we are, but it's going to take some time. It takes some time to do the engineering. It'll take even longer to do the actual physical construction. And all the while, if we do nothing, then the opportunity for crashes continue at its current rate, which is higher than the statewide average. So by lowering the speed limit, we've at least made an effort to correct a safety problem with a road that we are going to address eventually, but it gives us an interim solution to hopefully help avoid the next accident. Now, I understand that people do what they want to do, but we've already approved radar traffic signs, speed limit signs for that road, 2 of them, that will tell the people when they are exceeding the posted speed limit. That I'm hoping that helps modify behavior. But we still need to reduce the speed limit to try and gain an additional factor of safety on that road. Mr. Mayor?
Okay, thank you. So, this is a lot of data. I mean, and I have talked with the city attorney just a little bit about how this would get done, but it's not just a matter of deciding whether or not we want to change the speed limit. There are some consequences to that, and we need to be fully aware of those consequences and make a decision. It seems to me that the person who could help us the most with this tonight is the police chief, and I'm going to ask him to come up, and I want you to talk a little bit about, I know you're excited, but just a little bit about what we already do over there, what sort of the pattern of speed is, and how a change like this might benefit or maybe not. I don't know the answer. You are our expert, so let's hear from you.
I don't know about expert when it comes to me there, but I appreciate it. I used to be called the traffic Nazi, if that means anything, when I worked in Carrollton.
That's called expert.
I worked a lot of speeding and DUIs. I guess the concern we have is the not being able to run laser at all anymore, or radar, even when a person complains. And we'll get complaints, about people speeding out there, and we'll go out there and put the buggy out there, and then we'll set up a little bit, run a little laser, just let folks see us, try to slow them down. Hadn't wrote a lot of tickets out there, obviously, because you said most of the speed is at 51, and we can't write them for anything 10 or under, so we can't write a citation. But just being visible and having the ability to run the laser and run the radar is helpful. If we lower the speed limit, we automatically lose that option, so we can't run laser or radar out there at all. Don't know how the public will react to that, whether they'll take advantage of that, even go faster. I hope not. Obviously a concern that we have. I guess the other concern is when we do work on the road and we make the road a lot nicer and a lot safer and possibly bigger to deal with all the traffic that we have, are we going to be able to go back to the speed limit at 45? And, if not, how's that going to work? Because then you're going to be slowing people down. It may be 5 lanes, or it may be, a bigger road. I don't know. That's just a concern. I don't know. Just a concern.
Let me ask you a question. Do you currently use radar there?
We don't very often.
Because it's kind of tight. There's a low shoulder.
There's not a lot of places to set up there. We have people that will say, hey, you can sit in my yard. We may sit there a little bit, point it, slow people down and stuff. But like I said, very seldom do we have a lot. And if you looked at the numbers, there's not very many that is in excessive speeds. You know, there's some in the 50s and 60s, but there's not a lot, you know, in the 65 and 70s. And we usually give people 16 to 18 over. Y'all didn't hear that. But we do that to make sure people understand that we're not a speed trap. We're not going to write you for 11 over or something like that, even though the law allows us to. We do give them 16 to 18 over. And so you don't get many at 61 or 70 there.
Chief, who
That-
sets the rate? Is that GDOT or is that local?
That sets
Speed limit?
the speed limits, GDOT does, yes, ma'am. And they do it based on the 85th percentile that Mr. Young spoke of.
So you do currently shoot radar, laser sometimes over there?
Sometimes.
Yeah.
And I don't really have a number because they may set up sometimes and not write some tickets. You know, we definitely write trucks over there because that's been been spoken about so many times. So we do write that. We may be sitting there waiting on trucks, running laser, running radar, you know, that kind of stuff. But it's not something we do every day or every week.
So I just learned something the other day, and I try to learn something at least once a year.
Right.
Because when you already know everything.
Whether you need to or not.
Anyway, so what I learned, and actually learned it from Captain Parker, but we were talking about something wholly different from this. This didn't have anything to do with it, but he talked about getting certified to run the radar or the laser. And he talked about having to be able to use your eyes to
Estimate the speed.
estimate a speed within 5 miles an hour in order to be able to write a ticket.
Right.
Or to be able to
Or
shoot
to
the
be
radar.
able to be certified on radar.
Or
Yes, sir. Or laser.
And we were talking about why this particular individual didn't get a speed citation. Instead, they got a reckless driving citation. And he talked to me about how it was difficult to be able to do the speed because he didn't have the radar. They weren't able to shoot the radar in this particular case.
Weren't
The vehicle's
certified.
moving too fast. No, the vehicle's moving too fast.
Oh, okay.
Would the fact that the road is no longer certified, would it impact your ability to write tickets, period?
No.
So you would still be able to
We
write.
could still write too fast for conditions. We could write reckless driving.
But those would be exceptionally-
Well, too fast for conditions, if it's raining and they're going too fast or whatever, you could write them. They have an accident, slide off the road. You can write them for too fast for conditions, stuff like that. You can't just write them for too fast for conditions because they're on a roadway. You know, they're going fast. You have to have something else that
There has to be another
contributes.
element.
Could be another element, traffic, pedestrian traffic, golf carts, anything like that.
Okay.
So you can look at it that way.
I think it just concerns me because we have a situation here in the city where we don't, where we're also not able to write tickets from radar in a neighborhood, and we also have some sign issues there where we can't write tickets for the sign.
Stop signs.
And it always concerns me that when people get the idea that you are not going to be writing tickets anymore, that they sort of do what they want to do. Do you have any concerns about that?
I did speak to that at first, and that it does concern me a little bit that we are letting people know we're not going to be running radar or laser out there.
Okay.
So, yes, sir.
All right. Does anybody have any questions for the chief?
Simply because you can't run radar doesn't mean you can't park a patrol car out there like you
Correct.
normally do. So
Correct. Yes,
just
sir.
the presence. Would your little radar cart, would that be prescribed, or could you still put that out there to
We
let
can
them know?
still put it out there because we don't sight off of it. Yes,
Right.
sir.
So it's just the ability to write the ticket.
Correct.
Off of the radar.
Right.
So
Also, yes.
Go ahead.
Where I usually will see the officers sit is not actually on Punkentown, it's on Mirror Lake Boulevard. It'll be up a little closer to the Taco Bell in that area because there's actually a little bit of a straightaway there. I don't know if I've ever seen, I don't even know if you, and this I guess would be the question. I believe with radar, you have to have a certain amount of time you have to clock them at it.
You have to be visible for so many feet.
And
for them. Yes, ma'am.
the first 2/3 of the road, which is Punkentown Road, which they're designated on the studies that were done even by the state, is this, and there's no shoulder, you would actually have to be in somebody's driveway or parked on Old Stone Road, blocking anybody from getting by to sit off the road. And I've never seen anybody do radar down there, but I have seen it up at the other end where it's straighter, where you can see them. There's a little bit of shoulder. There's places for the police officers to park. They did tell us from the state that we could exempt a road without exempting other roads.
That's correct.
So maybe, I don't know, Michael, is there a difference between Punkintown and
The state
Mirror Lake?
recognizes the difference between Mirror Lake Boulevard and Punkintown.
So if you're asking for a reduction in speed, it would apply to?
Punkintown.
Okay, all right, that clarifies that part for me, okay.
Do we
All right.
recognize that here in the city, from your standpoint? I mean,
As far as the license goes, where it would have to be, and the license would explain that on where we can and can't run, and I'd have to look at that. I haven't looked at that close.
Yeah, I haven't thought of it like that. I mean, my
Right.
concern there, and not even concern, I mean, I feel a little bit better because the reality is we're only talking about from really the tennis courts to 61.
Yeah,
I'm concerned that we won't even have a discernible difference here. And we're about to put signs up, flashing signs that may also help. And I would hate to, to go down a road that might impair us later if the signs would make the same difference. So I'm looking for a recommendation from staff. And Tom, do you have anything to add, or David, either of y'all? Okay. So anybody have any more questions for the chief?
Thank you, guys. Appreciate you.
Yeah, they got your back. Anybody else have any questions for the chief? All right. They don't, chief. Thank you. All right. So here's sort of the situation we're in, and I appreciate the difference between what is Punkintown and what is Mirror Lake Boulevard. So we have a speeding problem over there. We don't have really a lot of good ways to address it. We're trying to make people more aware. We got some flashing signs that we're going to put out there. That may help. I don't know. What we've been told by GDOT is that if we were to reduce this speed, that we would lose our license to shoot radar on that particular section. But a fair argument is that we don't shoot a whole lot over there anyway, and there's a whole lot of reasons for that. I mean, there's not any good places, especially that particular section of town. So I just don't know if there's going to be a discernible difference, and one of the things I absolutely detest doing is something just because you can. I hope that if this is what we do, that we are able to have a markedly, discernible difference. In other words, I mean, we're going to have Hunter out there putting those straps out again at some point in the next, I don't know exactly when, but I'm going to talk to you about it because I want to know if it makes a difference. Because GDOT has explained to us that it ain't going to make any difference. That in fact, it's not going to be a discernible change at all because people drive the speed that they're comfortable with, regardless of the sign. I had hoped that the flashing signs would help, but we're not going to know the difference at this point. So does anybody up here have any more comments on this item? Mr. Young has prepared a motion, which I have asked David to look at, and I think it's appropriate.
Yeah, I've looked at it, and it seems to be a satisfactory motion, if you choose to approve it.
And you have no further comment on it?
Consternations.
Mayor?
It's within the discretion of the council.
Ms. McPherson, go ahead.
I would just like to say, based on Councilman Young's presentation, the facts that he brought and everything else, I don't think this at all has the appearance of we're just doing something because we can. I think we know what's occurred on that road. I think we've seen the statistics. We've seen I don't want to use carnage because it's not that bad. That would be an overstatement. Between school buses coming down, semis coming down, and the rear ends, and people don't know apparently that there's driveways off that road, that we are also demonstrating to those that we need to demonstrate it to, and I think that's been clear by our attorney, that we are making every attempt we can to try to calm the traffic down there until we can make the significant changes that may be a certain amount of years down the road. We're doing what we can now. And we will make those changes. We've made steps towards showing that we want to do that we're invested in making that road safer. But until then, the alternative of doing nothing, I don't see as an option.
So, yeah, no, I mean, I follow what you're saying. Here's my point. When I say just because you can, there is nothing in these documents that tell you that reducing the speed limit is going to change the driving habits or the speed traveled on that road. Nothing. It talks about what's going on, and we are clearly concerned about it. But it doesn't, what you're suggesting is just for show. We're telling people, well, we're doing something. But nothing in here says this is going to slow that traffic down.
Well, no, but you can try to train up your kids right and not be guaranteed that they're going to go the direction.
Well, I've done that
you
with
sent
my
them.
kids. We'll see how it goes. All right, Mr.
Okay.
Young, would you
There's
like
no-
to make a motion?
Wait a minute, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Carter, go ahead.
Since this is only Pumpkin Town, can we also change the speed limit for the Mirror Lake Boulevard from the red light on down? I mean,
That's good. That,
seemed like we'd want the whole thing to be one speed limit.
we don't want to lose, that would be,
There's an obvious break in the road at the signal light at Shoreline Parkway. So the characteristics of the two roads, Pumpkin Town and Mirror Lake Boulevard, are completely different.
I would agree with that. And I also would not want to jeopardize that portion of the license either, where we can shoot radar. I mean, that particular section, we can and do. I mean, there are officers out there regularly. They're mostly there for the 18-wheel traffic, but they're there. So I would say no, in my opinion.
Okay.
But Mr. Young, would you like to make the motion?
I move that the city change the posted speed limit on Pumpkin Town Road from 45 miles an hour to 35 miles an hour. Take the necessary actions with GDOT to modify its status on the LOR list of roads maintained by GDOT.
Second.
All right, I have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion?
A third.
All in favor? Okay. All in favor? All right, all opposed? All right, so the motion carries. And we will move on to D1, Economic Development. 2021 alcohol license agreements with the Olive Tree at the Mill Amphitheater.
Yes, we would like to partner with the Olive Tree and the City of Villa Rica to provide the sale of beer and wine at the Villa Rica Main Street Summer Concert Series for 2021 at the Mill Amphitheater. Those dates are June 12th, July 24th, August 7th, and Friday, September the 10th. We have had a partnership with Olive Tree since 2016 in providing beer and wine for the approved events at the Mill Amphitheater. The agreements continue to be a 50-50 split between us and the Olive Tree. We've had no prior issues with them in the past with any of our events. During the March monthly Main Street Advisory Board meeting, the board voted to once again partner with Olive Tree, as they are a great community partner with us, and they continue to help us with splitting the profits and selling of beer and wine.
Okay, are there any questions for Janet? All right, if there are no questions, I will entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion that we approve the license agreements with the Olive Tree to provide the sale of beer and wine at the June the 12th, July the 24th, August 7th, and September the 10th Summer Concert Series at the Mill Amphitheater for 2021.
Second.
All right, I have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All right, all in favor? All opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Janet.
Thank you.
All right, we have tabled that item. All right, Jennifer, is Jennifer still here? Oh, sorry. You jumped up, you was over there. All right, let's do F1, financial update. And for your second appearance, go ahead. Make sure you get a close-up of her. People love that.
Excuse me, Mayor, just.
Yes, hold on just a second.
We've removed the changes to the highway system? Was that
We've
at the very
tabled that.
beginning? Got it. Thank you.
All right, go ahead, Jennifer.
Okay. She's gonna pull up the,
They weren't quite ready, were they?
I know. I won't be as quick. I'll only be about 30, 45 minutes.
No. You'll be a lot less than that, or you'll be alone.
She brought dinner and dessert.
Right.
Yeah, because I'm getting a headache from hunger.
There we go. Thank you. Okay, this is the financial update through March of this year. There we go. All right. As you know, we have pooled cash. So this is showing 3/31/2020 in comparison to 3/31/2021. You can see the total cash and CD. We actually have 21.9 million at the end of March versus the 19.2 million. The general fund made up to 10.2 million. With the water and sewer fund being 3.5, the sanitation and solid waste being 80,000. We are finished with the Carroll Splost, the old Carroll Splost of 2008. We will be receiving some bond proceeds for the 2021 Carroll Splost, probably within the next week or two. The 2015 Carroll Splost, we've got about 2.1 million, and the Douglas County 2016 Splost, we have 2.1 million. This is just showing the residential building permits, water taps, and sewer taps from March 2020 versus March 2021 this year. This is only based on new construction. And of course, the March 2020 was pre-pandemic or just early into the pandemic. But we are seeing that we've had 58 building permits at around $214,000. Water taps at 34, 51,000, and sewer taps at 65 at 260,000. With our local option sales tax, we receive from Carroll compared March 2021 to March 2020 was about $10,000 more, which was about an 8.5% increase, and the Douglas County portion of local option sales tax saw a 11.3% increase from 102,000 to 113,000. Also, Splost is split up, as you know. The Carroll Splost is still seeing an increase from March of last year to March of this year of around 19%, and the Douglas Splost is also seeing an increase of around 14%. This is the business activity, the Water and Sewer Enterprise Fund. You can see that our revenue has increased by about $140,000, but also our expenses have increased, and that's primarily due to the debt expense as well as the depreciation. The solid sanitation and solid waste fund, this is the one Sarah was speaking about earlier that has very little room, a very small margin. You can see that through March of 2020, our net income was just $4,898, and this year it is $12,510. The self-funded insurance, this fund is still performing well. You can see for the first quarter of our fiscal year, we had a savings of around $10,300. In January, we had about a $25,000 savings. February, we had about just under $3,000 savings. In March, we did have a little bit of a loss of just $5,545. But overall, for the so far this fiscal year, we've had a savings of $32,727, and our bank balance in that self-funded is just under $890,000. If you have any questions.
Council, do you have any questions?
I was just going to mention, thank you, Jennifer. If you knew what our sanitation and solid waste was before, we were always in the red, so we've come a long way. On the self-funded insurance, we just happened to hit an area where, I don't know, more people were sick. It wasn't my knee replacement. That was last summer, so it wasn't me. But maybe it's just one of those things.
I think also probably because the pandemic's kind of It's not gone away, but people are now going to the doctor more.
put
They're
everything
having,
off, didn't
they're
it?
putting
Yes,
everything
yeah.
off.
Got
So
it.
that's part of the
Makes
reason that
total
we're gonna
sense.
see a little bit of a spike in the increase in the claims.
Makes total sense. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? All right, thank you, Jennifer.
Thank you.
All right, let's move on to the most exciting part of the evening. When I get to hear the Doomsday
The Cheermeister.
Parade. Oh, it's Tom. I'll recognize you for 2.5 minutes. Go.
All right, I sent you a copy of this afternoon.
Yep.
You've got some updates there on projects, splash pads continuing to move along. We're almost ready to move into distribution and collection. You've got to go see the playground at the V-Plex. It's done, really sharp looking, drains great. You can't see any difference in Cleghorn Anderson yet, but we've almost got those conceptual plans done. We are working on the submission of revised PUD plans for Mirror Lake. This is huge. This is the whole, allocate more lots and all that kind of thing process. So that's going to be coming to you before too long. Maybe the July meeting, now that I think about it, P&Z in June and you in July. The 78 water line extension has been installed and about half the taps were in place this morning. I'm hoping they were out there today, but I don't know. Once they get the taps in, the contractor gets the taps in, then we'll come back and do the water meters and tie in the service lines. If you've not been by Villa Rica Elementary, the gym is no longer, but they have started to put in footings for the new classroom building. I mean, you can actually see sort of where things are going to go. It's going to be a two-story addition where the old road was, the little driveway beside the building on the left when you're facing the building. It's pretty cool. So if you just go by there occasionally just to watch that go up, I think that'll be pretty interesting. 450 Edge Road has come in to meet with us. The rezoning condition is going to you, I guess, in July with conditions, and we're going to be working on that whole traffic thing between now and then. And I know you're excited to hear that the staff is working on the budget calendar for this year, so that'll be coming to you pretty soon. We've had just a number of unique meetings since the last council meeting. Leadership luncheon, some of you attended with Jens from Loico. You know more about HBC than you ever wanted to. We had a department head luncheon, which I think this was serendipitous, but we had a luncheon at Jefferson's, which was also the fundraiser for the public safety guys. So that was pretty cool. If you don't mind, ordering and getting your food in 45 minutes. But the fellowship was good, and it was a big crowd and a lot of energy, so that was pretty fun. You have approved a proposal to engage someone to help us with annexation. We've had the first meeting with him, and I think maybe the second meeting also. The mayor and I have had another meeting after the one I reported last time with Carroll County School staff. And then later on in this report, you'll see that Councilmember Marchman and Sarah and I went and met with the full board, which is the first time I've done that for this purpose, talk about the TAD. And it was conceptual, but I thought very well received. I recently had a meeting with the guys from Flowers Bakery. They have a stormwater pipe failure in their driveway, which is going to be really fun to figure out because it's not on their land and it's not on our land. It's on GDOT's right of way, and they've told us to forget them being involved in fixing it. So that one's going to be a good one. Jeff Matthews and I went to Atlanta a couple of weeks ago to meet with some really high-powered guys who do serious apartment development, like serious apartments. He's lost the guy that was going to do the development behind the high school. That guy lost his financing because of the no eviction thing that was still in place. And so Jeff's out looking for another one, and we went and met with some guys who are really interesting, trying to get them on board with Villa Rica. Let's see what's next here. Staff had another really good meeting with a prospective developer for some of the land in the TAD district. Many of you attended the National Travel and Tourism Week observation at Uncourt. That was on May the 4th. Appreciate y'all attending that. Y'all don't know what that means to Sharon and Janet for y'all to come to those things. That's a big deal. And Sharon has the added benefit of having some people from some other communities, you know, come to ours, and then they have theirs, and none of their elected officials and none of their staff even attend. Right, and then they come to ours, and there's like 4 of y'all there, with, you know, so she gets a little yan, you know, what she enjoys, I think. We met with an architect and engineer to talk about the renovation of the old burned out cabinet shop on 78 right at the flyover bridge. So there's something cooking with that. That's a terrible building, but a lot of space. You know about GFL. We've had a couple of pop-up concerts since we met last. Attendance on a low end has been in the 40-ish range, and high's probably not been but 100. So we haven't quite figured out what button to push just to make like hundreds of people show up for those. But I'm telling you, some of the performances have been really, really entertaining. Councilmember Marchman probably can speak to that more clearly than most because she's become a regular at these things. So I encourage you to go to those. They've been really good. And you can't beat the weather. So 6 o'clock in April and May, I mean, it's been great. And I have 2 pieces of good news to end the evening. You ready?
Oh my God.
We have hired a replacement for our distribution and collection manager, which has been vacant for 4 months. And we've been extended an offer that's been accepted for a wastewater plant manager, which has been vacant since December of 19. Biggies. So one's coming on June 1, one's coming on June 7th. Hope nothing gets in the way. One's relocating from Chicago. Really big news, though. I mean, staff has worked really hard for a long time, interviewed a bazillion people, and we're hoping that those are really good additions to our team. Questions?
Are you done?
Told you I was gonna end
I'm
on something
excited.
good.
That
Tom,
was
do
pretty
we-
good. You didn't do anything to tell me that anything's burning down or falling apart or we've done something
nothing
completely
new.
wrong.
But
Any
some-
council members have any questions?
Tom.
something to take note of, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
He lost his financing because people did not have to pay their rent, right? And people knew they didn't have to pay their rent. There may be a reason to allow that for a period of time, but what the heck does the landlord do when the landlord has mortgage, insurance, everything else, and the rent's not coming in? And
Yeah.
now in this case, it wasn't built yet.
Yeah, one
But
thing.
they're like, you're not gonna get any
One
money.
thing that we're concerned about is when the market is in effect again, that a lot of people will skip rather than pay, right? Because they've been given a free ride.
Have months.
So they're just gonna skip, and they're not gonna just skip on the rent, they're gonna skip on the water and sewer bill, right? So the response to that is to do a really good job of cutting off, right? And so I think you're gonna find that we're doing a really, really good job of cutting off. And because of that, we're keeping that leash short so that if people do skip on us, the exposure's, you know, something that we can live with.
Right, because we stopped the moratorium on the disconnect.
Yeah, we
some
didn't do
months
that.
back. We didn't really.
We
All
didn't
right.
do that, but
I
for
just
6
wanted
weeks
to,
or something.
if we had an update on when our public works director was going to join us.
Oh,
Yeah, so he has gone through surgery. He had his surgery last Wednesday, I think. And I got a text message from him maybe yesterday, because we know somebody on our staff that had a similar surgery that was like out of pocket for 4 weeks or longer, and he said his pain wasn't that bad, so I'm hoping he's coming around, and then we'll talk to him again when he gets back in the saddle, but no pun intended since he got thrown by a horse, but anyway.
Mayor,
No pun intended, but you want to make sure we knew the
Mayor,
irony of it. Are
It
you-
just comes out sometimes.
So July, is that the answer?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I'm gonna talk to him again. I probably won't talk to him until June. I don't think he'll be back at work until either the middle or the end of June, and then we'll see
All right, well, let us know.
about notice
All
and
right,
all that kind of
Councilwoman.
stuff.
one other quick one because of something you just said. You said we're being real good at doing the cutoff. So here's my question. When I'm reading the city manager reports every week, some weeks there's 0 cutoffs, and then there's other weeks. So does that mean we're not going out those weeks and doing it, or we truly have some weeks with 0 cutoffs? Sometime in 1 month, there'll be no cutoffs on 2 different weeks or more. Sorry, okay.
I can hear you from there.
I would say that's staffing, you know, maybe somebody's out sick, so we didn't address it that week because they're doing other things. But I would say they're staying on top of it.
So will that put us at a deficit if we're not doing those cutoffs? Because we do have pretty regularly weeks with no cutoffs.
Well, you just catch
that
up
gonna
the
hurt
next
us?
week, right?
So if there's a week skip, then the next week they'll include that cycle that was missed. So it's just a week lag kind of thing.
Okay.
Yeah, if we weren't cutting off, it would be bad. I have
Okay.
every confidence of that.
All right, so we are reaching the end here. I want to take a minute to acknowledge our Carroll County Commissioner, Clint Chance, is in the back of the room. Thank you for being here tonight. And I don't know if Matthew's in trouble, but his wife is here, and she has sat through this whole meeting. I want to say thank you for being here. Does anybody have anything to add, Mr. City Attorney?
No, nothing more, thank you.
Ms. Marchman is trying to rush me.
I'm not, I just said no.
She said no. That means, all right, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
All right, is there a second? I didn't hear a second.
I said you did, and you heard me say that. Don't you stop.
All right, all in favor?
And I've been going